This episode of How To Wrestling was requested by the Wizard of Problem Town, one of our lovely backers over at patreon.com/How To Wrestling. And hey, if you enjoy the show and you like what we do and you enjoy it being 100% ad-free, then why not head over to our Patreon page and get access to a whole shed load of extra audio goodies for your ears and some videos for your eyes. I'm talking about over 100 pay-per-view review episodes going all the way back to SummerSlam 2015, AEW, WWE, and even a little bit of NXT in there as well. Our pay-per-view classic series where we go in depth on classic pay-per-view reviews, most recently with In Your House 3, the triple header, but other episodes including WrestleMania 17, Survivor Series 1998, and the incomparable Good Friends, Better Enemies. All this and much more available, including Q&A videos from Joe and the ability to sponsor an episode, available exclusively on our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/How To Wrestling. A big shout out to all of our lovely backers who support us. But for now, it's time to get settled in, get some veins going on the side of our head. It's How To Luna Vachon. Greetings, friend, and welcome to another episode of How To Wrestling, the world's first podcast detailing how to wrestling, how to get into wrestling, how to understand wrestling, and goodness knows, maybe even how to enjoy wrestling. And today it's me, your old pal Kevin, joined as I am always by my better half, Joe Graham.
Hello.
And today we're going to look at one of, if not the most unique woman we've ever laid eyes on here on this podcast, or in the world of professional wrestling. Joe, today is How To Luna Vachon.
I know a bit about Luna Vachon.
Yeah.
And by a bit, I mean she's scary. She has a scary voice and she looks scary. She's got like a brain painted on her head.
A brain painted on her head?
Yeah. I don't really know anything about Luna Vachon.
Well, here's the thing. Firstly, apologies for the slight delay in this episode, but we went away very spur of the moment on a little getaway. We went back to Ireland for the first time in nearly 2 years. And when I came back, I experienced for the first time in many, many years, I had minor hearing loss. A very, very small little case of that. And if there was ever a wrestler who we really needed to make sure that we had our ears definitely open and attuned to, it is Luna. And you mentioned that Luna is scary, and she sounds scary. I think she popped up in the Goldust episode. Was that?
She did. So Goldust went through a gimmick that I really liked, and it was like, I get confused between Seven and the artist formerly known as Goldust.
Yeah, Seven was the paedophile Spectre.
Oh, the paedophile Spectre, okay, which I also did like.
Gee, no.
Stop it, I did. I'm sorry, I'm not going to lie to the fans. I liked it. Cancel me.
Cancel for liking Seven.
My notes apology. I'm sorry I liked Seven.
Dustin Rhodes will block you for that. Right? That's guaranteed.
Well, no one tell him then. No, the artist formerly known as Goldust.
Or Tafka Goldust, as he's known on the network.
Tafka. And she, Luna Vachon, was like his valet, manager, something?
Yeah.
Friend?
Confidant.
I don't know. Confidant, yeah. And they kind of had this like BDSM vibe where like he would come out on like in like a ball gag and like a dog collar and a
whips
leash.
And chains was the general
and she'd
mode.
be like, "You disgusting thing, you follow me around," and he'd be like, "Yes," and I thought it was great.
Now, I was going to ask you, although you've done it a bit there, if you can, because obviously people big fans of your voice and they like to listen in and hear your nice dulcet tones, to say that your voice is on, not say the opposite end of the spectrum, but a very different part of the spectrum to Luna Vachon's voice. Are you capable of imitating it? Like, is that something that you can whip out?
I don't know if I can really do a good job.
Yeah.
I feel like in recent years as well, like since I've been podcasting, I've like looked after my voice quite a lot. You know, like I try and do warm-up exercises and like, you know, drink water and stuff. And
making those silly noises, it's great. Like anytime we do an episode of How To Wrestling, it's like we're about to do like, I don't know, a town hall production of a musical, because we're like, whoa!
Don't forget the cat sounds. Meow. But yeah, Luna, she has this really horrible voice like this. I can't do it properly. It's too scratchy.
Yeah, we got to be careful, and I have to be particularly careful because I love doing Luna's voice.
Yeah, I bet you can. I've just given myself a hoarse voice just by doing those seconds.
Well, she has a voice that kind of goes like this, and yeah.
And it is something that when I first saw it when I was a kid, I don't want to say it terrified me or anything, but it fucking repulsed me. It was like, I hated Luna as a kid.
Really?
I absolutely, because she just unsettled me to no fucking end.
Well, when you say hated, though, because like I feel that doesn't explain very much. For like a child who watches wrestling, there's like, there's hate and there's hate and there's hate. So like, go into that more.
Okay.
Let's dive deep.
Because when I would have seen Luna, I would have been like, 10 years old or whatever. So it's not as if like I was watching it kind of going, oh, I don't like her because she's not a typical babe or anything like that.
But like, would you like change the channel?
No, but I would be like,
Kind of sad.
She distressed me.
Distressed,
She was very upsetting.
She like make you anxious.
Made me anxious. You said it was a brain, but like the veins on the side of her head, it really upset me to no end.
Yeah.
But like I do remember as well, like reading comics as a kid, like Poison Ivy was my favorite villain, and then like there would be these random comics where suddenly she had all these like dark veins to simulate chlorophyll, and I was like, no, I hate it. I hate thinking about veins and I hate thinking about the circulatory system. Like,
oh wow, and yet you're a wrestling fan. You're surrounded by vascularity.
I know, but like it's the same reason why John Cena for a certain period of time I was like, I don't like that. I
don't like his noodles in his arms.
Yeah, and she really. Like, and it was always what she wanted to do. She wanted to upset. She wanted. She in many interviews she said it was my job out there to be ugly, to be horrible, to be nasty, to be scary. And we had a lot of correspondence from fans who were literally like, "Oh, she scared the bejesus out of me," or the fans where they're like, "She scared the bejesus out of me," and then facilitated a sexual awakening many years later.
Oh wow!
And I think Luna definitely is. Even in wrestling, where you expect these over-the-top characters and people to be like, wanting to be, scary and whatnot. And we saw a little bit of that with Sherry, I guess, but she's a different breed of cat, is Luna Vachon.
Like, Sherry's not overtly, like, aggressively threatening.
She's more like manic scary.
Yeah.
Whereas Luna's like violent scary.
Yeah. Like, you feel like Luna would beat the shit out of anyone. You don't feel like Sherry would because she kind of is a bit more protective of herself.
I'll tell you were asking me like what made me kind of not like Luna as a kid and all that. I have very early memories when I was in school, one of our prefects to wake us up in the morning, and he was a drummer and he was in a heavy metal band and he loved like really heavy metal, and he put on like Cannibal Corpse at 7 a.m. to wake us up.
Oh my God.
And in the same way where I was just like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And like, but everyone would be like, oh, but the guy's really nice in the band and they're not like, I know, but I don't like it.
Unpleasant.
It's like the noise is designed to make me upset, and it has succeeded in doing that.
Well, you were a little sensitive kid, I guess.
I was,
so it wasn't to make you happy anyway. I think if I'd seen it as a kid, I'd have been obsessed with her.
I would say like a lot of people, like she seems to be like a wrestler who, even though she's not the biggest star in the world, but those that she resonated with have held a candle for her for decades. And Luna, I think, what is very interesting about her, the voice is obviously strikes you straight away.
Yeah.
But where that voice comes from, and that is to do with Luna's background. Luna is from the Fighting Vachon family out of Montreal and Quebec in Canada, the French-Canadian wrestling family, the Vachon family, who are known and synonymous with being one thing, which was tough as fucking nails.
Yeah.
And you were asking me, like, when we found out a bit about this, you were asking me, like, what is it about kind of...
Canada.
Yeah, what is it
they're all
Canada?
really badass. All these really excellent wrestlers who are like, probably could beat you up. And they all come from Canada.
And I think, like, a lot of it to do with it is, particularly if you go back a few generations, because Luna was born in the 60s, so her uncle, Mad Dog, her father, Paul the Butcher. I should point out as well, myself and many other wrestling podcasters constantly make the mistake of saying that Mad Dog was her father, and it's not the case. That Mad Dog was her uncle.
Her dad was the Butcher?
Paul the Butcher Vachon. And her aunt was Vivian Vachon, who was considered to be the greatest, if not one of the greatest wrestlers of the 1970s of women's wrestling.
She, like, related to Mad Dog? Like, was she his
Yes.
sister?
They were all on the one side, so
Right,
her
okay.
father, Mad Dog, and Vivian were all, like, brothers and sisters.
Right, what an interesting, weird fucking family.
And I mean, like, you think about Canada, obviously, it's cold, and we take for granted, things like infrastructure and, access to goods and services. But, Stu Hart, I always remember from Brett's book, he lived in a tent when he was a kid. And that's not to say that it was like the dark ages in Canada, but certain parts of Canada, and if you were traveling around as a wrestling family, you'd be going to parts of the country that were only accessible, a few months a year because the lake freezes over and you can use it as a road suddenly.
Yeah.
So that kind of breeds a hardiness and a toughness.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show you, before we got into Luna, a little bit of the family, and we watched a little bit of her uncle, Mad Dog Vachon, who was probably her biggest influence. What did you think to Mad Dog?
I absolutely love him. He's so cool.
Set the scene. What does Mad Dog look like? What's his gimmick? What's his presence?
Oh God, he looks a bit like The Big Show, but really small and really hairy.
Yeah.
And he's got like this chin strap beard.
He's missing a bunch of teeth.
Missing a bunch of teeth. He looks like a pit bull terrier. Like,
yeah.
He looks like a nasty dog.
Junkyard mad dog.
But like one of those ones that's like, if it's not biting you, it's gonna fall asleep on you, and you're too scared to move it because it might bite you.
It's kind of a dog that will remind you of how vicious it once was at any given moment, type of a thing. And he's got those kind of gnarled ears as well. I think the promos we watched, it was mostly a very bemused Mean Gene Okerlund being like, "What are you doing here, Mad Dog Vachon?
It's a pine box that I'm making."
He's like building this coffin, but he's building it by smashing apart loads of wood with a hammer. He's just like absolutely manic. I really liked him. He was very charismatic in his own weird way.
Mean Gene towered over him as well.
Yeah.
In a business that even back then in the 70s and 80s was not known for people of a smaller stature.
No, so he must be pretty small.
He's very small. Much like Luna herself. Luna's also surprisingly very short.
It's so weird. I think of her being really tall.
Yeah, I think she has a kind of imposing presence.
I think, whenever a woman is buff like that, because like Luna's got these massive, big, bulging biceps, like she's pretty ripped. So I always think that women like that are tall.
And it was Mad Dog's voice then was kind of one of the big parts of the inspirations for Luna. She got that voice from him and would try from a very young age, from the age of like 3 or 4. She was trying to imitate his voice and be like Mad Dog.
Imagine how scary it would be seeing a little toddler doing that voice. And her head's like bending backwards.
Could you understand what Mad Dog was saying, like a lot of the time?
A bit here and there.
Yeah.
Not much.
I think oftentimes in wrestling, when someone's got that unique a voice, actually what they're saying is almost superfluous.
It's hard as well because like footage from that era hasn't aged particularly well. It's all on, like, you can get bits on YouTube and stuff, but it's low quality, and like we had to turn up the volume to like max, and even still I could barely make out what even Mean Gene was saying.
Yeah.
So it is hard, but like he does speak in a very strange and hard to understand voice.
So I remember when I was a kid, like the rumor was like, oh, Luna, the reason she sounds like that is because of steroids. In the same way,
steroids.
China's big, so China's on. Everyone was like, steroids. She had a voice
why
like
doesn't,
that.
like every wrestler sound like that? It's so ridiculous.
Case in point, China, who probably did do steroids at points in her career, who had a voice like fucking porcelain China, like the softest fucking voice in the world. But what happened with Luna, and she hadn't done many interviews, so tracking down the few that she had done, I was able to kind of piece together some of this, not necessarily always in a very cohesive manner, how she would bring out these little nuggets. But she did have a normal voice, but the normal voice kind of by the time she was in her late teens, early 20s was gone, because she had literally scarred up her vocal cords by doing Mad Dog's voice for so long.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting as well is that when we watched some of the Mad Dog promos, someone referred to him as Maurice Vachon. He's like, Maurice, don't call me that, I am the Mad Dog. And do you know what Luna's real name is?
No.
Gertrude.
Oh my god, they have these proper old-fashioned names.
And like the interview I watched with her, the first thing she was like, don't call me Gertrude. That's why I became a wrestler. I was fighting all the time because I was called Gertrude. And like being the daughter of, like, not just one wrestler, like kind of being the adopted daughter of another wrestler and having this, larger than life aunt who's this legend, that's very, very huge. It's probably the closest thing I could think of is probably Brett in terms of having it loom in her life. I got a fact here, and this is kind of the reality of living with a wrestling family. By the time she was in year 8, which would be the equivalent of grade 8 in America or whatever, she had been in 16 schools.
What, just from traveling for wrestling?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's like kind of hard to, have a wrestling life and then your separate life, and the separate life is kind of changed up. I mean, 16 schools in,
I might as
you'd be
well
14 at that point, maybe.
Being the new kid at school and having that voice.
And that name, and your family's tough wrestlers, by the way, Also, she said that none of the wives knew that it was, in the family, knew that it was a work. They all thought it was real.
What?
So she was like,
so she was the only woman in the
privy.
family?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And like she told like Vivian very early on she wanted to be a wrestler, and she started training her like on a mattress kind of, age 10 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
So she got into wrestling, through the connections in the family and all that. But a big stumbling block for her is that she just wanted to be a heel. She wanted to be, a monster, and
like her uncle.
Like her uncle, and here she was, this kind of petite young woman who was well spoken with lovely long blonde hair, and she was told by her aunt and the promoters, "You're not heavy enough, you're not big enough to be a heel."
Right, yeah.
Because back in those days, a heel, if you were a woman, had to be like kind of a heavy set kind of bruiser or whatnot. So she kind of went off and just kind of, decided to forge her own path in that sense. And her earliest kind of break came, she was in Championship Wrestling in Florida, which is where Dusty Rhodes would have booked, where there was all sorts of kind of, there was Satanist angles and all that stuff. And there was a guy called Kevin Sullivan, who was a wrestling Satanist, who loved his gimmick so much, he's like to allude to the fact that he was a real-life Satanist as well.
Right. I'm sure there's a few Satanists in wrestling.
Odds are there's a couple, right? Yeah.
They're probably all in AEW now.
You tell me that the Tommy End isn't actually a Satanist?
I'm saying Miro. He's the dark horse.
That's why he's God's favourite champion. His God is actually Satan.
That Xbox. Sacrificial lamb got him there.
But the very early thing that Luna did, was her first kind of big angle, was she was just like kind of a backstage reporter, and she had her in a nice little kind of business 80s power suit and all that. And she was to present an award to this young wrestler, and then the angle was that Kevin Sullivan, the Satanist, was going to come in and beat up the young wrestler and smash up the award. And Luna was meant to come in and be like, no, leave him alone. And then he was going to slap Luna. And he grabbed her and he slapped her as hard as he could, and he did it twice in a row, and he got blood out of her. Like,
what? From slapping?
He slapped her so hard,
oh my
her
God.
lips split open. Anyway, they go backstage, and she was like, in tears on camera, like, oh my God, goes backstage, the biggest smile on her face. And she goes right up to him and goes, "Is that all you got?" And she said, because she's a Vachon, that she's tough and she should have hit him twice as hard.
So hang on, she did this shoot or kayfabe?
Oh, this was backstage. None of the fans could see this. This was in front of the boys.
Oh my God.
And again, it reminded me of Sherry, who was, also had to say, "Is that all you got?" And you want to be a women's wrestler in the 80s, that's how you got in the door.
Yeah, you got to be tough as nails.
Tough as fucking old boots.
So just on the thing of her being like an interview lady, how did she transition from that into wrestling then?
So they had rebranded her basically, and that was in Florida, and she went to other places like the AWA.
What, just like a total lack of continuity? She got beaten up and now all of a sudden she's someone else?
When she was the reporter, they gave her a different name and all that.
Right, okay.
And
so canonically that's not even the same.
Canonically that's not Luna Vachon.
Right.
Like, although for all the wrestlers in the back, I'm pretty sure they remembered Luna Vachon and that she was a Vachon,
Yeah.
After that fact. So she trained originally in a camp with Moolah. I think that came up via our Mae Young episode. There's a lot of dark stories and whatnot. I could find nothing about her experience or anything there, but one would assume the pedigree of her family name meant that she was probably immune to most of the modern day slavery that went on in those places. But it was around this time that she met and fell in love and courted my favourite wrestler.
order.
Well, it is an interesting story of how they got together. But my favourite wrestler when I was a kid was a vampire called Gangrel. Are you aware of Gangrel?
I'm aware of Gangrel.
You like bloodbaths in wrestling.
Yeah, I do. The original slime.
So Gangrel was wrestling as a vampire warrior at the time.
Warrior?
Vampire warrior.
What, like vampires need warriors? Or
he's a vampire warrior.
He was a warrior that turned into a vampire? Like, I don't understand
Well, there was a dingo warrior over in the other company, so he was going to be the vampire warrior.
Got it.
And he claimed he always had a soft spot for her, and that he thought they were friends and all that. But he was terrified of her. Okay. Like, absolutely terrified of her. Mainly because he knew that she was going out with, like, Dick Murdoch, who's this, like, old badass wrestler. And, if you messed around with her, you'd incur his wrath, or she might incur his wrath. It was a very kind of dodgy situation. But Luna took a shining to young vampire warrior / Gangrel, and she did it in strange ways, such as he was training once in Florida, and she came in through the door, and she ran over to him and said she wanted to start doing some wrestling training, and he was really hesitant, and he started grappling. She jumped right on his back and bit into his shoulders as hard as she could and drew blood.
Oh my god.
And the story he tells is that she was actually the original vampire, and she bit him and made him a vampire.
What?
And like, there's loads of stories like this where he'd be like, driving to the show, and someone's like, oh, let's swing by and pick up Luna. And he'd be like, oh, please don't, I don't want it, please don't
So
pick her up.
scared.
And like, you'd pick her up and she'd be in the back seat, and then she'd like jump in the front seat and be like,
Why don't you like me?
and she'd like start choking him and all this stuff. Really fucking absolute crazy stuff. And the very, very first time he saw her was after she'd had some match and she'd gotten busted open. And she kicked down the door to the locker room. She came in, face a crimson mask, and just went and licked it all off her face and went,
fresh meat.
and that's when he knew that she was the girl for him.
Well, that's when he realised he liked her.
Yeah.
Aww.
So they were together for 18 years.
Oh.
A very lengthy marriage in wrestling.
They actually
like.
were married.
They were married.
Oh, that's so sweet. The demon and the vampire.
And yeah, it is a wrestling love story that only could happen in the world of wrestling. Just what was shocking to me was kind of how early on, like, that they were hooked up together and all that. And I think that Gangrel, thinking that he was a wrestling vampire and what wrestling was after in the early 90s, he'd get called up quite soon to WWE. But it was actually Luna who ended up coming into the WWF first.
Right.
And we watched some of her early promos where she was paired up against Sensational Sherry. And these were fucking amazing, Joe.
Yeah, they were absolutely incredible. I mean, it's going to be good because obviously when we've done an episode on Sensational Sherry, and she was a very strange, almost demonic woman.
Yeah.
And Luna, obviously, even more so. So, I mean, yeah, them two doing promos against each other was obviously magical.
It was some of the most intense fucking mic work I've ever seen.
I just wish they'd both been like. I'd love to see a promo between them both with Mean Gene in the middle.
Yeah, trying to keep them apart. Like,
yeah,
it is like, considering 1993 when it's the main angle is Bret Hart is wrestling a sumo wrestler. This was so far ahead of its time, both in terms of like her look, which was so striking for WWF in that era. It's very kind of squeaky clean, family friendly, and she's like straight up, 50% dominatrix, 50% like something out of a black metal porn video or something like that. It is like, and the video, you can find it on YouTube, it's called The Most Metal Promo in Wrestling History, where she's surrounded by all these like chains, and she just is pure, unfiltered demon, I guess. Some of the lines that stuck with me, which was, trying to use mere words to describe the beauty of Luna Vachon is like using a screwdriver to cut roast beef.
Amazing. That is absolutely iconic.
But the sad thing about this is that this didn't actually lead to a match. Unfortunately, Sherry was gone before then. They did some house show matches.
Yeah.
But this big, really intense feud, it never actually got to them on television or a pay-per-view or anything like that.
Oh, that sucks.
But like, when we were watching it, the crowd were super into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Because, Sherry at that point, she'd had a proper big career. And run with the Macho King and stuff at that point, hadn't she?
Yeah.
And she was a face as well.
She had just turned face, yeah.
And obviously it's kind of weird seeing Sherry as a face, but it works so well because Luna's such a great heel.
Sherry can only be a face when Luna is the heel. Because Sherry, I was like, I don't know if I want to watch a Sherry face promo, and Sherry's there on her knees going, "You'll be screaming that I'm sensational!" This is great. I fucking love it. Also, I think it might be the earliest example of wrestling passing the Bechdel test.
Yeah, we had an interviewer lady who looked just like Princess Diana interviewing them both about each other. It was great.
Like the look in terms of the veins and like the hair as well. Did you know there was it was all shaved on the sides?
Yeah. So she can draw the veins on. She looks a bit like a mutant pony.
Oh, what?
A mutant pony.
I mean, because of the big kind of puffy tail that she has on her hair.
Well, yeah, it's like kind of, she's got the sides shaved, but she's got like a perm down the middle, and it's like not a mohawk, but like that area of hair. So she's got like a mane, basically.
So the origin behind it is that apparently when she was first in Florida and doing some stuff kind of in the territories, she had a tag team partner and she had the other side of her head shaved.
Oh.
So the idea is that they were kind of like matching and all that, which again, that's so far ahead of its time and all that. Like tag teams would kill for that these days, that kind of synchronicity. But the veins on the side of Luna's head, originally those were just drawn on, but they did become actual tattoos. She got that tattoo.
I thought you were going to say they became actual veins.
Oh,
I was like, no! Like she became so incensed all the time that they just popped onto her head.
Fucking hell.
It'd be horrible.
So the idea behind it was that she said that one half of her was like Luna, which was the side with the veins, and the other half of her was like her,
Gertrude.
like Gertrude, I guess, like it's Gertrude. But it was just interesting to think that she was kind of playing with that. I think we watched something from AWA where she had really leaned into that kind of like she had makeup done completely different on one side.
Yeah, she looked like a normal, nice lady on one side.
And her skin was red on the other.
Yeah.
Like, so really, like, just completely far ahead of its
I
time.
can't believe she got tattooed, though. That's so extreme.
The reason it happened, and it actually takes us to, after the stuff with Sherry didn't work out, she got paired with Bam Bam Bigelow, the Beast from the East, who we, I think, saw in our Taz episode. And Bam Bam used to be, his job was to draw on the veins on the side of her. And Bam Bam's wife apparently got sick of him coming back with like all this stuff all over his hands all the time.
Right.
So for Luna's birthday, Bam Bam's wife took her to a tattoo parlor and asked her if she wanted to get him done permanently. And she was like, wow.
Wow.
So she did. As it pertains to the voice as well, I should point out, one of the interviews I watched is with Gangrel. Like, that voice and the noises is kind of, like, part of her communication style. So, like, Gangrel would just randomly say something like, that was a fun time we had that one time, wasn't it? And then she'd look lovingly in his eyes and go, ah. Or she'd say something, like, really kind of standoffish. She'd be like, oh, okay. And then she'd turn to him and go, Rah! But then give him a little smile.
Wow.
So, like, they obviously, the gothic lifestyle, as Vince Russo penned it.
Yeah.
They were deep into that, like, for real.
Bless.
There was one point where she was talking in the interview about, offers other people had at the time to be in, in Playboy and stuff like that. And Gangrel turns to her and goes, what? They asked you to be in Playboy, though, didn't they? And then Luna says, no, that was that horror magazine. And then Gangrel goes, oh, with a big smile, big eyes in his face, like, so. Yeah, so she got paired up with Bam Bam Bigelow, two tattooed people. I guess it was probably because of the tattoos that they were stuck together. And this brings us to our first match that we watched, because Bam Bam Bigelow had a huge issue in 1993, and that was some fucking clown named Doink the Clown. And this takes us to WrestleMania 10, a night which brought us the legendary Owen Hart versus Bret Hart match, which people talk about in the annals of history. And it also brought us this match, which is Luna and Bam Bam Bigelow versus the Clowns.
Doink and dink.
You needed the show to be paused when their names were called out.
Yeah.
Because of the silliness. What are your thoughts on Doink and Dink, Joe?
Fucking love them. I'm obsessed with Doink and Dink. I'd heard of Doink the Clown before, and I thought, that's stupid. I don't like that. Like, everyone makes fun of Doink the Clown, and not in the kind of like, haha, we love him kind of way. So I was just assuming that I wouldn't like him.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and he's this fucking horrible, scary, nasty clown.
And he's not a heel, folks. He's the good guy here.
Is he?
This cheeky clown.
And he's got like this other smaller clown with him, who's so obviously there's this guy with dwarfism, and he's really scary. And they look exactly the same as each other. Like they've got the same body shape, the same face mask.
Yeah, that kind of hood, that Doink hood with the hair is so fucking scary.
It's like they've got literally like they've taken off the face skin of a clown and then they're wearing it over their own heads. It's so upsetting and I love it.
I got a quote from you when Doink sprayed one of their guests in the front row with his flower. You said, oh my fucking god.
Yeah, it's great. Also, they're both so fast. They're like really fast clowns. Like Doink running around so speedy, and then Dink comes out and he's like like a little bee.
Are you telling me that Dink is a spry clown?
They're both spry clowns. They're both very fast and very spry, and I absolutely love them. I want an episode on Doink and Dink the clowns.
I don't know.
It's my birthday soon, Kevin.
I don't know if this helps with the whole wrestling as a circus critique when we have literal clowns rolling
Love
around
it.
here.
I never thought, because I don't even like clowns that much. Like, clowns are
Yeah.
fine, you know, but I've never...
You're not like scared of clowns, are you?
Yeah, I mean, scary clowns I'm scared of.
Yeah.
Like, but like, I don't care strongly about clowns either way. I don't like hate them or love them or anything. But I just love Doink and Dink. And like, just really entertaining.
And there's something about pairing a couple of fun-loving clowns against no fun Bam Bam Bigelow
Yeah.
and straight up cruel and evil-looking Luna Vachon. And look, we might as well spend some time to talk about it because some of the fucking outfits here on this episode are next
Amazing,
level.
yeah.
This fucking collar thing that she's got going
So
on.
cool. She's got this massive black collar, and like her outfit is like mostly leather straps and like a silver bikini and like assless tight chaps things.
I love about it as
So
well.
cool.
This is like not a time where, you know, you would have wrestling commentators like Jerry Lawler being like, "Whoa, check out the babes."
Well, we did get a little bit
got
with
a little
Sherry.
bit though, yeah, with Sherry.
He was like, "Oh, I like looking at Sherry."
But Luna Vachon, there was one person in a lot of the clips we watched who was adamant that she was his centerfold dream.
Oh, yeah.
And Bobby the Brain Heenan
Oh yes.
loves Luna Vachon. He's like, "Look at her, she's such a doll, McMahon."
There's my centerfold.
He's like, and he was asked, like, "What is it you like about her?" And he goes, "Well, she's beautiful, she's great. Her uncle is so tough, Maurice Mad Dog Vachon. Her aunt Vivian Vachon." So, all right, nerdy Bobby Heenan has got a crush on her because of her wrestling family pedigree. Like, even when Luna's not tagged in this match, you get a good sense of her because there is this low level
Yeah.
happening all the time. And even though it's quite, you could look at it and probably go look at the outfit and go, it's pretty edgy and all that jazz. You know,
Oh, very much so.
but it's not done, even though the outfit's kind of skimpy, and it's obviously for a certain corner of the room. It's definitely for kicks. But I think it's not presented in a sexual way. It's
No.
presented as a scary thing.
She's not presented in a sexual way. Like,
Yeah.
literally, you could get, like, everything she's wearing, you would see on a very sexy lady in NXT, like, rocking it, and everyone would be like, yeah, she's, like, the hottest woman in wrestling. But because Luna distorts her
That's
body
it. It's
and
not
her
just
face.
the makeup and stuff.
No,
is
it's
it?
not. It's not at all. It's the way she carries herself. It's the way, like, she'll push her face into her neck, so she gives herself this like double chin, and she'll like turn her neck slightly so her neck almost looks broken.
She can literally turn her mouth like sideways,
Yeah,
almost with this weird snarl.
Gives herself like a hunchback and like keeps her arms close to her body like a dinosaur.
Yeah, she does this. She like literally like looks like she's trying to tear her skin off of herself
Yeah.
at times. Like you get this sense with her. It's almost like she's a fucking terrifying stand in JoJo or something
Yes.
like that. That there's this otherworldliness, which I think it is probably a disservice to be like, she's just doing her uncle, because Mad Dog had that intensity. But it literally looks like that there is this fucking energy that's just exploding out of every fucking orifice of
Mad
Luna
Dog
Vachon.
never seemed otherworldly,
Yeah.
like, or mystical or anything like that, whereas Luna is very much like she seems like a demon.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell any kind of crazy, over-the-top, ancient amulet storyline with Luna and be like, yeah, buy that, absolutely.
She's an Oni, yep.
But like as well, like, she has these kind of crazy earrings and chains. She'll like rip random stuff off and just fuck it to the ground.
Yeah.
The reckless abandon which she pulls off some of those earrings made me wince.
No, that really heavy necklace, and she just tears it off like she's mugging herself.
And I thought, okay, it's WrestleMania 10. It's the clowns versus these kind of scary baddies. It's going to be a little bit of ring around the rosy type of fun, like particularly when Dink gets tagged in. It's like, all right, here comes Luna. There's going to be some like kind of silly stuff, and she fucking waffles old Dink. She kicks him so goddamn hard.
Yeah. I think that's partly why I liked these clowns so much, is because I've said it before, I've always wanted to see a wrestler with dwarfism get
Yeah.
presented as like an actual normal person.
Yeah.
And obviously Dink is wrestling a woman, which is like supposed to be like, oh, because he's not a real man or whatever, but because it's Luna Vachon, who wrestles men generally in her career, it just makes it out to seem like legitimate, like
Yeah.
badass for both of them. It's just really cool to see them both actually beat the shit out of each other.
And Luna does stuff which, you know, they've done stuff with wrestlers with dwarfism before bringing like a big guy in, and it's always kind of like the standard heel heat of like, oh, the bully throwing his weight around.
Yeah.
Whereas with Luna, there's a bit of that, obviously.
Yes.
You know, she slams Dink and all that.
She's nasty to him.
That's it. There's like a lot of the stuff that she's doing is like she's got their fucking those claws and
Yeah,
she's
raking
ripping at
him.
the fucking at the mask and all that. It is amazing stuff. And
But because Dink is such a scary little clown, it's like, so like, I didn't find myself being like scared for him. I was kind of like, I didn't know who to cheer for because I was like, they're all so frightening.
I was a bit bemused, of course, when you have Doink tagged back in along with Bam Bam, but then Vince McMahon said, "Uh-oh, the big boys are at it again," and I was immediately always forgiven.
We had some great lines on commentary about the clowns, like this one from Jerry and Vince, where Jerry goes, "There's got to be 3 or more Doinks under the ring," and Vince says, completely seriously, "No, we have 1 Doink and 1 Dink."
For marketing purposes, we only have the rights for 1 Doink at a time, alright? We can't be messing around with that
Don't
shit.
be greedy.
So we have Dink doing lots of kind of evasion from Luna and Bam Bam, who kind of work in tandem to kind of like try and get him.
He's so fast.
Yeah, they take advantage of his nimble nature. We then have Dink getting completely smushed. I couldn't tell if it was on purpose or not because of what happens later in the match. I am open to the possibility that when Bam Bam ran against the ropes and just fucking waffled Dink and sent him sailing, that could have been planned. It could have been an accident. Either way, it made me go, "Ah!" and gasp to no end. We have Doink getting dismantled by Bam Bam, who hits the diving headbutt to provide the win for his team. And what was meant to come afterwards, I think, in this match, was going to be a heartwarming little moment when the 2 bullies tried to team up on Lil Dink, and then Doink saves him and runs them off. But instead what happens is there's a miscommunication, so Luna and Bam Bam pretty much kill Dink the Clown in this.
Yeah.
They both go for a dive.
Yeah.
And Dink rolls, but when Dink rolls, he gets waffled by Luna, who's sailing off that rope.
Because Bam Bam and Luna come from opposite corners, and Dink tries to roll out of their way, but
There's no way
there's
it's
no way
ever going to happen.
Yeah, it's literally impossible because no matter which way you roll, there's going to be someone jumping on you. And so, yeah, they both jump on him.
Now, this was obviously a massive fuck up, and
Was it though? Because I loved it. I thought it was really effective.
The crowd were like heartbroken because they just seen the clowns get killed, and then afterwards they saw the smaller clown get killed even more.
And then they have a little hug in the ring. It's really sweet. These 2 terrifying clowns like having a little cuddle. Like, they're there.
Luna and Bam Bam have this look where it's like, uh-oh, and then like, ah, fuck it, yay, and they walk off and they win. So Luna and Bam Bam pick up the win at WrestleMania 10, and it was a match which I was very glad that we watched for many reasons. What was your first outing with Luna and the clowns like, Joe?
Amazing. I mean, I can't give all the credit to the clowns as much as I do love them, but Luna was really good in this. Very, very fun to watch.
Have you got a star rating for me?
Yes. 5 stars. Perfect match. I would watch this again and again and again. I'd recommend it to anyone. So good. So good.
So Luna is around for a little bit, and unfortunately the women's division at the time, very, very shallow in that you would have, obviously, you had stars, you had people who could go like Lundra Blaze, you had Luna Vachon, you had Sherry was kicking around. But unfortunately for them, it didn't feel like that, women's wrestling was something that Vince McMahon wanted to take very seriously. Which is strange because if there was one thing you could have done to make yourself different from WCW in the early 90s, providing women's wrestling was certainly one of those.
Well, they still haven't learned that lesson, have they?
No, I mean, it is still kind of mind-blowing to me that WWE are now the industry leader in terms of,
And it still sucks.
SummerSlam, we got 3 women's matches, issues with a lot of it, but still, in terms of actual screen time,
They're the best.
They're the best.
By far.
And pay, they're the best. And, again, like we said in our PWG episode, it kind of beggars belief that WWE have managed to become the industry leader in this. It is kind of bullshit.
It is, but also then, I don't know, it makes me at least somewhat grateful for, the one good thing that brands and corporations do, which is, they have to adhere to, certain diversity outlines just to like meet a quota because
Yeah.
it looks bad for their shareholders otherwise. And it's
Yeah.
like, if that's the reason you do it, I don't even care so long as you do it.
I think a lot of us were probably thinking after Ronda departed in late 2019 that we wouldn't be getting as much focus, but it feels like it's the same, if not more. And
Yeah.
now the fans are back as well. I was like, in the spirit of Luna Vachon, who was ahead of her time and was an incredibly talented wrestler who didn't have anyone to wrestle on the main fucking WWF, the main show. She could have written her meal ticket. I hate that we're nearly fucking 30 years later, and I feel that there's women on AEW and there's women, on different companies who are still kind of in that boat, like where it's like there's not enough push from management.
Sorry, we just can't find any other women that we want you to wrestle with.
Sorted out wrestling industry along with your many other flaws. So she departs WWF after a spell, and what was interesting about during this time is that over in USWA, which is Memphis, which would have been kind of a developmental league or a feeder system, Vampire Warrior, Gangrel, he was wrestling there at the time. And Luna, just to be with him, she would wrestle the full WWF circuit, do all the house shows, all the TV tapings, pay-per-views, all that. And then she would, at the weekends, she would head over to USWA and she'd just like show and go, hey, I'll wrestle. Like she'd wrestle for free just to, be with her husband and all that. Which I thought was like, showed a passion which a lot of her contemporaries probably didn't share.
Yeah, I can't see many wrestlers doing that.
Men or women, I
No.
could imagine people being like, yeah, I'll go wrestle for free because
Yeah.
I just love it so goddamn
And
much.
I love my husband or wife that much. That's
Yeah.
really rare.
So it was around this time she gets a call from the Young Upstart promotion out of Philadelphia, which has had around a year or so under the tutelage of Paul Heyman. Extreme Championship Wrestling wants to add a little bit more spice into their Raven and Tommy Dreamer feud, and Luna Vachon is brought in along with Vampire Warrior, who wrestled a few shots there, and she is like over the top in her praise for ECW when she's ever asked about it, even though she was only there for like 5 months or so. Fucking adores it. She thought it was great. She said you'd see every night someone would bleed in every match, and it was great. There were people bleeding for the show. She said she liked the mentality of everyone bleeding together, and she liked that everyone was working together to make the show together, as opposed to when she was in the WWF where it felt like everyone was just trying to make their thing look good, or maybe their opponent, but mostly their thing look good.
Yeah. She does have big ECW energy.
I was shocked that she was there for as little as she was.
I know, right? Because like, if she was booked properly, she could have been like their top star, like their top women's star anyway.
And I mean, it's something that Heyman, he flirted with a few times later on, what we see here, the idea of having this fucking badass woman come in and wrestle the men and not kind of bat an eyelid about it. Again, something which wrestling has tried and really failed to do, and kind of skirted around the issue, dipped their toe in the water. And it's so funny to look back in like 1995 ECW or 2000 ECW where they managed to do this without being like having the whole like guy, I don't want to wrestle a girl, but they just have it happen.
The fact that she's not this big huge monster.
No.
Like, and even today in wrestling, like if a woman wrestles a man, at least in the main companies, she has to be huge.
Yeah.
She has to be bigger than the men. And
That's true.
Luna's not. She's small. She's petite.
But this is such a perfect marriage of people here, because you've got Luna Vachon, this is from Heatwave 1995, in Extreme Championship Wrestling, a cage match, and she's taking on the young Studley Stevie Richards, whose gimmick is basically that he is kind of a lackey and a henchman, and he's kind of on Raven's side, and Luna is on Tommy Dreamer's side in this kind of epic feud that lasted several years in ECW. And there was something about seeing this young kid, Stevie Richards, come out, who Luna, in her interview, described him as a sweet little baby.
Aww.
And him coming out and spending around 5 minutes trying to work up the courage to step in the ring, knowing that Luna Vachon is about to come out. It was brilliant. It like built the myth of Luna Vachon, I thought. It was so fucking cool. These two have got some rockin' mullets as well. It's 95 and mullet season is in full effect here.
They're both ponies.
I mean, Stevie's pretty fluffy here,
Yeah.
you know? Have you seen much of Stevie Richards?
No, not really. I knew he was in Right to Censor, but I've not really seen any of their stuff. I'm aware of it. So, no, this is surprising. It's not kind of the type of wrestler I thought he'd be.
What do you think of the look of Stevie Richards?
Oh, I love it. Someone needs to bring that back. Like the crop top, the little Daisy Dukes, the big perm, like mullet hair. It's so... Like, yeah, if someone did that right now, they would be instant star material.
You're saying he reminded you of someone, like of a modern wrestler, was it? Or...
I can't put my finger on who it is. You said maybe Griff Garrison.
What the fuck is Griff Garrison?
I think maybe it's Griff Garrison a bit, but also someone else. I don't know.
Anytime anyone mentions Griff Garrison, I'm torn between doing a big John Huber, who the fuck, or doing a silly John Silver about to laugh, who the fuck is Griff Garrison? So Scared Stevie is in the cage, terrified, and literally his name is being announced, and Luna, like a fucking out of a cannon, is straight in the ring. And unlike her WWF look, where she's kind of all big and puffed up and kind of like this, almost like she's had electricity pass through her, she's kind of sleek here. Like, you know, she's like wet, slicked back hair and whatnot. And kind of in a kind of a sleek unitard. This is a hell of a look. And within, I would say, 2 minutes... Stevie was busted open pretty severely in this one.
Yeah, he's bleeding a lot. And actually, shortly afterwards, she started bleeding as well. I didn't catch what either of them got cut by. Did they just blade for the sake of it?
Well, seeing as literally every time Stevie ran into the ropes, he was then just thrown into the cage and like, blah, blah, blah. I think that was how Stevie got busted open.
It wasn't just like Luna being like, I love everyone bleeding together. Let's all bleed together by blading together.
The reason she's so pro-blood is probably because of some sort of like sacrifice or something like that, a ritual, I bet.
She loves drinking blood. I mean, that's canon.
That has canonically been proven with Luna, that's true. I think she busted herself open. There was a point where she did like a backward splash off the side of the cage where she was kind of facing out into the crowd, and she sent her body out flat and went flying down. She grazed her elbow and I think her forehead. But there was this submission that Stevie put her in where he tied her legs up on her, and she was lying on her front. He tied her legs up and put his foot in and then pulled her face back, and she was bleeding, and he just started slapping her, paintbrushing her in the face. It was, to quote Michael Cole, physical. They waffled the shit out of each other, Joe.
Yeah, no, they did. It was hardcore.
And there was some like, you know, you're used to seeing with women's wrestling in the 90s a lot of the kind of the hair pulling and stuff like that.
Yes.
And she did that with Stevie, but it was kind of terrifying with Stevie's hair to see him actually be flung around with his full weight while she was holding on to that scalp.
You see that happen a lot, as you were saying, with like female wrestlers, but oftentimes they're tiny. They weigh like less than 100 pounds. So when they get thrown around by their hair, it's kind of like, oh, that would be sore, but you know, at least they're light. Stevie Richards looks pretty big.
He's one of them deceptively big wrestlers.
And he's like beefy too.
Yeah.
Like not necessarily in like a overly muscular way, but
he's just a big dude.
Sturdy looking. Like he looks quite dense. And the thought of him being chucked around by his hair makes my scalp feel weird.
I just fucking love, you know, this is the ECW crowd where they're used to seeing women get beat up, really, you know? And, you know, when Luna gets powerbombed, Joey Styles goes, "It's the 90s!" For fuck's sake, man.
Yes,
like,
it is.
But just, like, how quick the crowd bought into it. It was as if they were... Because they've had, you know, we saw, like, you know, Beulah fight Fonzie and all that, and there was a kind of a bloodbath. But, like, how quickly they bought Luna as, like, just, she was wrestling, like, you know.
It's really interesting, this period of ECW, because, like, the crowd is not what I thought an ECW crowd of being. Like, the first thing we see in the crowd is a guy wearing a nice yellow Beach Boys t-shirt. And it's like, I can't imagine, you know, a year or 2 years later, that guy being allowed to wear that t-shirt in that room.
Didn't Brian Wilson spend a year in bed watching ECW tapes? I'm pretty sure. The greatest chant that we got in this match, Stevie fucks sheep.
Right.
Yeah. I was impressed that they didn't manage to chant about Luna's breasts or dicks or anything like that.
2 years later, and they would have done, I'm sure.
Luna does a splash off the top of the cage, and
I love them. Her jumps, her splashes, she travels so far, and she moves so quickly as well.
She's like spring-loaded in her feet, and I think she almost always overshoots it, feels like, because she's just like...
But I like that. I feel like too often in wrestling, like it happens all the time, especially like people with Bam Bam Bigelow, they undershoot.
Yeah.
They don't go far enough, and then you have people on commentary going, and he's made contact there because his forehead grazed lightly the whiff of hair on the top of someone else's head. No, she fucking lands properly, and she lands on her like crotch as well, like, which is a heavy, bony part of the body to land on.
Eat hips, like.
Yeah, that's it.
It reminded me a little bit of RVD, you know,
Yes.
speaking of ECW. Just that kind of
Powerful legs.
the hang time and just like the arms and legs back as far as possible. You know, she's taking the move like she's an action figure, more or less. It was... And off the top of the cage, and she pins Stevie and then goes, no! And she doesn't want to end the match there.
And she goes down and grabs his balls and goes, ah! And squeezes them.
The testicular claw, which causes Stevie Richards to immediately tap out, and the line of the night on commentary when Joey Styles says, well, I'll be damned! Stevie Richards had a set after all!
Yeah, knew that was coming.
And then he also followed up with, it's not the violence against women in ECW that shocks me, but the violence committed by women that shocks me. And I was like, I feel like, all right, this match was almost done just so they could say that line.
Yes, I think so.
But unfortunately, it didn't usher in a great era of intergender wrestling. But
Probably because after that they were like, oh yeah, because like any woman will probably just do that, won't they, to win? Because that's easy. There's nothing the man can do about it either.
I mean, I like that they told the story that Luna did that after she beat Stevie within an inch of his life and was going to pin him with a wrestling move, and then she's like, because you're so beaten up now, I'm going to do this
For
at the
fun.
end for fun. I loved it.
do this for fun. Ah!
So it was an intense encounter, and honestly, like, it was one which I don't think was on the network when it first launched, so I didn't know if we could find it. I was really glad, you know, watching old ECW was a little bit of a crapshoot at the best of times, but it was probably one of the most pleasurable experiences of watching ECW, mainly because I don't think either of the combatants, it was like, oh, if you don't hear their cool entrance music, you don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, this felt like it had the spirit of ECW a lot better than a lot of the quote-unquote classic ECW matches we've tried and failed to watch because of edits that have been made on the network and all that.
Yeah.
But how did you get on with Luna and Stevie Richards? What did you think of these two?
I enjoyed this match greatly. I thought it was a really good time. As I said, I loved her big jumps, and there's loads of them in this match. You really get to see just how like powerful she is,
And a
at moving around the
daredevil
ring.
as well.
And she has such confidence with the way, like, you can tell she comes from a wrestling family, and that she's probably been running ropes since she was like 5 years old. Because
Yeah, probably diving off couches in the living room and stuff like that.
She like throws herself at every surface possible. So I gave this 4 stars because it was really fun. And it was like it's nice to see an intergender match, which isn't, as you were saying, like just the classic like, oh, I don't want to punch a woman. Oh,
Yeah.
but actually the woman is stronger than me.
It's just, they're not saying that story is like that's inherently wrong or anything. It's just that if that's the only story that wrestling has managed to be able to tell with intergender so often,
Also, eye candy in Stevie Richards.
Hey, there was a
Boy
lot.
candy.
There was a lot on offer for everyone in this match.
Exactly, yeah. It flipped a lot of tropes on its head, and I really enjoyed that.
It was like after this match, and there was you have the end of the match, and because it's ECW, there was like, when's the point where you turn off the match? Because there's always like something that happens afterwards that leads into the next 10 things. And just because I recognized the pants that Tommy Dreamer was wearing, I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the bit where he handcuffs Raven to the cage and hits him with a chair. And I don't know why, I just had to watch it, and I'm sorry that you saw it. It was
Do you want to see a man get given brain damage?
It was just one of those little reminders of like, I think anytime you see something from ECW, like, oh, go on ECW, you'd be like, yeah, let me just show you a little bit of ECW, the other side of the coin,
I feel like the network needs to put up warnings, like a lot of warnings.
Yeah,
when they
unprotected
show...
chair shots to the head.
Yeah, like not even just like, because they've got the this is done by trained professionals, but I think they even need a disclaimer now that's like researchers showing that we absolutely do not do this anymore. This is like completely do not do this at home.
I wonder
any circumstances.
Do you think they believe that's too much of a peek behind the curtain if they're like, we don't do chair, because they've never said we don't do chair shots to the head anymore. They just don't.
Maybe. I don't know. I just worry that they're gonna one day they'll just get rid of all the matches with the chair shots to the head, and they'll be like, we never did that. Shh. Instead of addressing it and being like, actually, we did do it, and it's really bad, and we learned from our mistakes, and we don't do it anymore.
Yeah, it was just one of those little trips down memory lane. It was ECW in a nutshell. It was kind of parts of ECW that I'd forgotten that were great, and parts of ECW that I'd forgotten, like, not necessarily forgotten, it's like, you remember something being great when you're 15 and you see it in 2021. And, thankfully Dreamer is still wrestling and Raven is mostly alright, but it was still fucking jarring as hell,
Yeah, and I think much easier to enjoy something like that before, science tells you that these people then become different people as a result of these chair shots to the head.
I kind of feel like in some small way it was almost good that Luna's time there was short, because
she could have ended up doing some extreme stuff.
Yeah, if you can imagine, and I'm not saying he did. This is a hypothetical here, but Luna always feels like in everything we've seen, she has this urge in her to over deliver, because she wants to be the best. She wants to carry on the legacy of not just her family and her aunt and all that, but she wants to define her own legacy in a time where I can't think it'd be harder to try and do that as a woman in American wrestling.
Yeah.
And I could just, what Heyman's like.
Oh, yeah, that little whisper in her ear.
You're from the Fighting Vachon family, and no one's tougher than you. And that's why you're going to take this powerbomb through the flaming table. She would have done anything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely she would have done. Well, she was badass, tough as nails. She probably could have done anything.
Yeah.
But whether or not that would have been a sensible thing to do is a different conversation.
She does have a little brief tenure in WCW. She has a couple of shots there against Alundra Blaze as Medusa. She has very little positive things to say about Medusa. She kind of viewed her as being kind of a political enemy and all that. And I was watching, these interviews with her and reading the interviews with her, of her saying kind of felt like it was a who's who of women's wrestling at the time, that she was like, oh God, they were terrible and they were, awful and all that. But she also did say her issue with them was that she wanted what the men had, which was the men, at least in the locker room, had this sense that if we all get over, we're all going to do well because we'll all have better paychecks.
Right, yeah.
But with the women,
that's never going to happen.
This sense was always that if we all get over, 2 of us will be kicked to the curb because only 1 of us will be a star if there's 3 of us in the company.
Yeah.
So there was that kind of natural fear, I guess, from a lot of the women who were stars, in inverted commas. But the reality is that if you're the person who's bemoaning the other people for being like that, are you much different from them? Because you are essentially then cutting down the other women.
Yeah,
but it's lose-lose.
It's lose-lose, exactly. There is no way to win. I think it's very deliberately set up like that.
So she comes back into the Federation in around 1997, and she's paired up quite quickly with Goldust in the artist formerly known as Goldust gimmick, where there's more than a wink and a nod to kind of, BDSM and kind of, some sexy times that's played up for yucks on camera. Now, I don't know nothing about Dustin's personal life or anything like that. I know that Vince Russo has more than often revealed his hand in terms of his particular taste by a lot of very specific verbiage that seems to be used by women in particular in wrestling. But I don't want to spend ages speculating about someone's personal life. But she did a series of matches with Gangrel for a company called WWA in Australia, and they didn't go down very, very well. They were quite bad. And Gangrel said in interviews, he was like, most of our friends were like, you did better matches in your bedroom and your living room, than the ones you put on TV there.
Okay.
And there seems to be an implication there that their relationship was, again, to quote Michael Cole, physical. And I think that there was a lot of that in it.
Right.
To what extent, I don't know.
I hope Gangrel was okay with that, because all I know about their relationship so far is that she bit him and attacked him lots, and eventually he wore him. It's like Brock Lesnar and Sable. He wore her down and she wore him down.
It is always worth pointing out what a normal lad Gangrel is. For a man who has legitimate vampire teeth, he is a very normal dude.
I'm going to choose to believe, because I don't know anything about him, I'm going to choose to believe that it awoke something in him and he was into it in the end.
I think they did split up in the end, and I tried to find out why they did split up. And I know that Luna had problems with drugs later in her life. I know at one point she was a born-again Christian, but in one of the only kind of interviews I could find where he talked about it, you could tell he still had a big soft spot in his heart for him. He was kind of, fighting back tears and whatnot.
Bless.
But I think he alluded to the fact that whatever their lifestyle was, and they went kind of deeper and deeper down into that lifestyle to the point where he wanted out and she didn't. And I think it was drugs, sex stuff, and the company they were keeping and whatnot. And when the vampire taps out, it's probably a sign that you're in some kind of, not to kink shame, but I think they were in kind of a bit of a dark spiral at one point.
Yeah, or maybe just on totally different wavelengths.
Yeah.
She's obviously quite unique into the things that she's willing to do to herself and to
Yeah.
others, and you have to be a certain type of person to enjoy that. So
I know by 1997 in wrestling as well, it's a much different company in WWF than you would have had when she left originally, because you've had the rise of, you know, two women who really kind of changed what it meant to be a woman in WWF, which were Sunny and Sable. And also as well, I guess you could argue, you know, if from a different perspective, somebody who defined what it meant to be a very different type of woman, and probably no one else got to be that role ever since, which was China. So Luna in there into that mix was very different indeed. And it's went from being a company where her being kind of scary and stuff like that is good for, you know, because we're doing a family-friendly product. And now it was more being used to kind of almost use her to hold her up as a mirror against, like, well, here's, you know, Sable, and here's Sunny, and here's Luna. And I don't know, it felt to me a little bit like that would get to your confidence and your image of yourself at a certain point.
I think it could do. I don't think it necessarily would.
Because we watched, I think we did, there was the Miss Rumble swimsuit contest we did.
With Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young.
Yeah, and she was in that, and like, she did not want to do that, like, at all. Like, she did not want to do that.
Was that the same one which had, was it Ivory?
Ivory as well.
Yeah, they had a lot of women in that who were like,
did not want to fucking
didn't really
do
want
it.
to do it. And then you had Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah who were like, yes, take
Yeah.
off all our clothes.
But like, I was watching this interview with her, and she's saying like, you know, no one wants to see me in a bikini. People pay to be scared by me. Like, and why would you want to see me in a bikini? And then she was like, you know, then I put on my bikini. I was like, I was almost shocked by like how good I looked. And I was like, you know, it happens with wrestlers sometimes when you get so down the rabbit hole of a character and an image.
Well, when it gets to the point where you're tattooing veins on your face,
Yeah.
like, that is going to change your self-image, because you'll
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and you'll see a veiny, scary face looking back at you.
And it just kind of, if the fact that, you know, Luna wasn't able to appreciate herself in a bikini or a lingerie or whatever, like millions of her fans definitely did. That for me was just kind of like, oh, you know, wrestling business, but I wonder specifically her circumstances, and that, like, that drive that she has to be this character, you know, for whatever reasons it was.
Well, she wanted to be unique, and she definitely was. But I don't think it's just down to like how they booked her. I think it's partly down to how they booked the other types of women, like Sable and Sunny and that lot. And that you have on commentary Jerry Lawler going, I can't wait to see them naked. I hope they lose this match so they're naked.
And it's not as if you have the commentators going like, ugh, Luna. But they'd be scared of her and whatnot. But
like, they wouldn't ever sexualize her if there was like,
there's,
you know, because there's other women to do that too. That's their job. That's what Sunny and Sable and that lot, that's what they're for.
It kind of feels like it almost always is going to end badly when you take someone with the unique background and mindset of Luna and pair them up with someone like Sable. It just feels like that's an almost impossible way to do business with all the various men pulling the strings in their ears and whatnot.
I think it says a lot about how sexualized in general wrestling is that like a woman like Luna who didn't need, you know, I think she's a, you know, very sexy woman in her own right, but she didn't need to be. And I think it's the fact that she felt that she needed to be sexy in some way, as though that was like tied to her worth, when actually her value is a lot more in her uniqueness and in her performances and stuff like that. But she still was like, oh well, you know, oh, not me, I can't be sexy, even though I probably should be sexy because I'm a woman.
So you don't have a division deep enough to facilitate the nuance
the
of a character
spectrum
like
of
that.
women.
That's it. It's like kind of, here's the hot one and here's the not hot one. That's kind of how they're presenting it. And all the stuff with Sable came about, it was entirely like, Sable was never brought in to be a wrestler. She was
really
it's-
working her way through the indies. Sable.
Hiro Matsuda broke her leg on the first day of training, I'm pretty sure. You know, she had to pick Mark Merrow up on her back and climb a flight of fire escape stairs, I'm pretty sure. And Merrow's like, don't let go. You know what, I was in the research for this and you were like, a how-to Sable.
And you were like, no.
No way. And then like literally I stopped for a second and I was like, yeah, you're right, actually, that's going to be
because who else is
huge.
going to fucking do it? No other wrestling podcast would.
That's
what makes us different, is that I will put my foot down and be like, no, I want a how-to Deborah. I want a how-to Sable.
I want to find out everything there is to know.
I genuinely do.
I appreciate it.
We're not going to just talk about their boobs either, even though we might talk a little bit about the boobs. Just a bit.
No, I like it though, because, you know, WWE, And some people always turn their nose at this. You know, Luna was put in the Hall of Fame in 2019. It feels like every year, like a different woman gets put in because WWE like wants to be seen to be putting, you know, a woman in. But it feels like it's almost always met with crossed arms and tuts from wrestling fans because, why is Tori Wilson getting
not a real wrestler?
And it's like, well,
it's like their job was a wrestler.
Yeah,
they are a real wrestler, whether or not you like them.
They were on the road, you know, just as much, if not more, in some cases than the men. And you know,
I just feel like, you know, I love Baron Corbin. And if Baron Corbin was a woman, he probably would have been like Sable or someone. So I have to fight for my Baron Corbins of this world.
We love our God as a woman, Baron Corbin as a woman. That's what he instead. So yeah, Sable was kind of, you know, Mero was the big signing. Mero was the big steal from WCW. He was Johnny B. Bad, and Vince McMahon loved that gimmick, and he wanted Mero in the company.
Reminded him of his childhood,
and
probably.
Then he realised that he didn't have the rights to that gimmick, so he was stuck with Mark Mero. But luckily, his amazing wife Sable was there as well, and Sable was kind of an enigma in some respects because they didn't do much with her, and she got over like way more than probably even Sunny, who was out there like every night being like, "Hey, I'm Sunny, I'm your favorite." Like,
so Sunny was like a face, wasn't she? She was like kind of girl next door.
She was, but she did play a heel character as well. But she was kind of Sunny was like kind of mischievous and cheeky was kind of her thing. You know, Sunny would like spray a water pistol at Jerry the King Lawler or something like that.
Okay, right.
Where Sable would come and wave.
Right.
And Sable was, you know, there was never a chance that, you know, she was going to be doing kind of physical stuff or anything like that. But on the house show loop, I think there was one night Luna said that there was a snowstorm and there was way less wrestlers on the card than normal, so everyone had to like extend their match by 5 or 10 minutes. And I think it was like Goldust versus Mero, and they were like, we have to go like fucking 20 minutes in this match. We don't really know how we're going to do. And Luna was like, oh no, I'll do stuff with Sable at ringside. And she started like, you know, chasing her and stalking her. And they did a bit when they got in the ring and they had like the referee pull them apart, and it got over huge because fans love Sable and they loved when
Why did they love Sable?
Because she was, you know, it's the late 90s. It's after Baywatch, Pamela Anderson, Barbed Wire. It's like the zeitgeist of the hot woman at the time was a busty blonde with the peak over the sunglasses and the big hair.
But they've got Sunny.
Sunny wasn't Sable. It's different breed. You know, and that's honestly it. And
what? Because she didn't have the sunglasses.
She had a different body, even though they're both blonde ladies. You know, she had a different body type, but she was. And if anyone tells you otherwise, I think they're wrong. It was genuinely the fact that she was very much in the mold of a Pamela Anderson from that time period, which was like in the late 90s. That's what red-blooded males, as they would like to say on commentary, that's what they wanted to see. And I think Sunny was like a wrestling character, whereas Sable felt like I don't want to talk too much about Sable because we're going to do an episode, but she felt like this supermodel who just happened to come into wrestling.
Right.
She wasn't like, because Sunny was like a wrestling fan and, you know, you know, whereas Sable was not like a wrestling entity. She was this, you know, that was how Vince McMahon and Vince Russo thought she was the most beautiful woman they had ever seen, and she was presented as such.
Right.
In a 90s vibe.
Right, okay.
You know?
I still don't really understand, but I don't want to.
All the more reason for an episode, I guess.
Definitely.
You know? We'll try and explain the allure of Sable in our episodes. And I think, you know, they love to see her wave, but, you know, the idea of her getting in a fight with Luna.
if you've seen her wave, I mean, you can't imagine what she's like.
They might pull hair, they might roll around, they might, you know, some clothes might come off, you know, gasp.
Oh my God.
And Luna taught Sable a couple of basics, like here's how to take, you know, a hair pull, or here's how to throw my hair. And if you watched any time these two are, you know, ever locked up or did anything, it's pretty much like Luna's like, right, put your hand here, your other hand here, and Luna moves herself around. Yeah. It's kind of like
Kenny Omega wrestling a blow-up sex doll. I didn't mean for that to sound as mean as it did.
That sounds so mean.
I'm so sorry. I could have just as easily said someone wrestling a pencil.
Yeah, Brian Pillman wrestled a pencil, and Ric Flair could hypothetically wrestle a broom. We don't need to bring Omega and his sex doll into it.
It was a great match, though.
So, yeah, the idea then is that they're going to bring back the Women's Championship at one point, and Luna's really excited about this because the Women's Championship, you know, it was there, then it wasn't, and then it's not there for like years and years and years, and they decided they're going to bring it back around this time in the 90s. Luna's literal goal since she was like 5 years old is she wanted to be the women's wrestling world champion. You know, like her Aunt Vivian was. She wanted to be a world champion for women's wrestling in some company, didn't care where, but I think she really wanted to be in the World Wrestling Federation. And according to her, she was told, we'll do this feud, you and Sable. We're going to give Sable the women's belt at some point, and then you'll get to have the women's belt at some point after that. So she was really into this idea of getting Sable over and all that. So this builds then up to this next match we're going to be doing, which is Mark Merrow and his wife Sable taking on the artist formerly known as Goldust and his partner and inspirational Luna Vachon. This is from WrestleMania 14, which is a very big night in the history of wrestling, the dawn of the Attitude Era proper, as I once believed it to be.
I'm so surprised that she's had, like, we're doing 2 WrestleMania matches of hers.
She
never would have guessed.
Yeah, she did pretty damn well. At this point, they mentioned on commentary at the start, they're like, JR's like, there's only been 2 other intergender matches in wrestling history. You know, the other one involves Sapphire and Dusty Rhodes. We've seen that one.
And I can't, at this point, they wouldn't have exactly had women's matches, like singles matches on WrestleMania, would they?
Let me think.
I'm trying to think of any woman, like,
I don't know if Bull Nakano or Alundra Blaze had a match at WrestleMania. I don't think they did. I think this, Luna may have been kind of
the only one.
Unless I'm thinking back very early WrestleMania, I'm sure Moolah may have had a match or something like that. But I mean, Luna, in terms of high profile and like being featured and all that, yeah, she definitely was.
Right.
And this was a difficult match for Luna because she thought this was kind of her meal ticket to getting to the next level, and also to women's wrestling getting to the next level. And she was apparently told beforehand, you lay a scratch on Sable, you give her a bruise, you give her, a mark of any sort, you're fired.
Why?
Because Sable, we need her for the pictorials. She's going to be bikini shoots, Playboy, TV commercials,
so who's
red
saying
carpet.
this? Like Vince?
Pritchard, Vince, Russo, the brain trust out the back there.
So I think stuff like that is probably going to go some way to making you think that, oh, I'm not, no one wants to see me, because that's why I can set myself on fire. I can probably give myself brain damage by hitting myself in the face.
Can you imagine a man
I can't bruise my competitor.
Can you imagine a man being told, like, make sure you don't get a mark on him? Like,
on Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
Don't you dare, Brock Lesnar, don't you dare bruise Roman Reigns. I mean, precious, pretty hunk.
But also as well, for a fact that if she went out and they had like a kind of a fake fight, whiff, no contact, no moves, she would have probably gotten, just as bad, if not worse. They've let her go before, they don't mind doing it, So, I thought I'd tell you that kind of, we're going through the match now, knowing that that's in the back of her mind here.
That's so shit.
The video package that tells us about the controversy that brought us here. What do you think of the storyline? Did you make much head or tail of it?
So, Mark Merrow is there, and then... And he's all like trying to get over with the crowd, and the crowd actually just like Sable more. Yeah. Because she waves.
You should have tried waving, Mark.
Yeah, have you tried waving? Have you tried being a hot white lady? And then Sable, like, does she slap Luna or something? Or she slaps Goldust, and then the crowd go wild, and everyone's like, oh, we're going to have her in a match. And then they have this match.
It's all about Merrow's rise to mediocrity.
Yes.
Or as JR refers to it, 2 of the most insecure men in the sport of wrestling locking horns.
They say that Luna's jealous of Sable because Luna's life lacked any tenderness, whereas Sable was kind, successful, beautiful, in love.
Wow. No, I think it was and loved.
Oh, and loved.
And loved. Not just in love, and loved.
Right.
They refer to Luna as being a possessed demon, and that this is as a result of an avalanche of insanity. And I thought, okay, well, they're not leaning too heavily into it. And they're like, this match is Beauty and the Beast. Like, okay. Does that mean Mark Merrow is beautiful and the artist formerly known as Goldust is a beast as well?
I would say so. I mean, I'd say that's pretty accurate. The Beauty and the Beast comparison didn't personally upset me. I think, somebody's got to be the Beast. I don't think Beast is inherently bad.
No, that's true. And Luna's definitely leaning into the bestial aspects
of it. Exactly, yeah. But Mark Merrow is definitely pretty.
Tell me about the look here that Luna Vachon is rocking when she comes out with the artist formerly known as...
So she comes out and she's wearing this, like, silver t-shirt corset jacket thing, and then underneath is like a gold thonged bodysuit, and then she's got these big silver space boots on.
Big Austin Powers final act vibes to this one. They're kind of aluminium foil outfits that they have to wear later on. This is like, even though I've seen this match many times before, this is still shocking, the degree of the heat.
Oh yeah, the crowd fucking are obsessed with Sable. They're so hot for her.
Because, Mero ain't that over with the crowd really at all. They've made a gimmick out of it.
Booing him at
and,
points.
we've watched a few of those artists formerly known as Goldust segments.
They hate them.
they're kind of, oftentimes they hate them and bemuse them into silence
Yeah.
almost. It doesn't really, it was an uphill struggle with my co-host on my other show to try and convince them that this angle is actually really good. And that you should appreciate Goldust crap artistry.
Thank you for fighting the battle.
I am a firm believer that it's a very good gimmick.
It is a good gimmick. Look, that on ECW would have gone down so well.
Oh yeah, I love the idea. There's something that for me is infinitely hilarious where someone is like, now you'll see my true artistic brilliance, and it's shit.
Yeah, he's like crawling around like in a gimp outfit.
There was a bit which we watched for the Attitude Era podcast recently where he came out and he's like, now that I've been fully unchanged from my wife and child responsibilities, I can read a poem I wrote when I was a child. And he just reads out some Dr. Zeus and pretends that he wrote it himself. And then Luna punches him in the mouth and calls him a freak.
Drags him away on a leash. So good.
The absolute fucking mastery of this, because all three people here besides Sable are working round the clock to make that crowd want Sable even more.
Yeah.
They have Luna kind of almost against character, because she's like scratching and clawing to get at her and, eating fucking flowers to get at Sable in the promo package. And then anytime there's a hint that Sable's going to come in and fight her, she's running, she's right out of dodge, she becomes a coward suddenly.
Yeah. She doesn't want to accidentally bruise Sable by like making contact with her own hard face and Sable's delicate fist. Oh no, might hurt Sable's hand.
And we get like 2 or 3 times where it's like the crowd think they're about to see Sable get her hands on Luna. Like, no, absolutely not, And because of the rules of the match, Sable can only be in there with Luna. So if Luna runs away, it means Sable is taken to the outside. And they're literally building them to a fever pitch. King speculates that it's some kind of a psychology that Luna is playing on her, And the line of the night on this particular bit of commentary, when King refers to Sable as being pretty as a picture, but Luna wants to hang her.
That's the best thing he's ever said.
When we finally get Sable tagged in, holy shit. On a night where Mike Tyson crowns Steve Austin the world champion, this may be a comparable pop. It is insane. The place is unglued.
You get a Sable chance.
Yeah.
I can't believe, this is 1998. So peak Steve Austin, peak The Rock.
Yeah.
And yet Sable is, who the fans are absolutely obsessed with.
And could you, list any of the moves that Sable actually did when she got in there?
She did a couple of kicks that were pretty good.
Pretty like Luna's kicks,
They were kind of, but Luna puts more energy, more aggression behind them.
Yeah.
Sable makes them kind of sexy. She did she do an Irish whip at one point? She did all the basic 101 stuff that you'd probably learn if you get a free day of wrestling training, and they don't want to hurt you.
You get her doing the powerbomb as well. That's kind of a big moment.
Yeah, well, Luna basically powerbombing herself.
That is it. And you could see later on they would have Sable do that to the likes of Mark Mero and stuff like that.
Can't
it's
do it.
Yeah, little Luna who can wrestle herself here. She gives herself a powerbomb and then she gives herself the TKO as well. It's fucking incredible. So the finish does come when we have the miscommunication between Luna and Goldust, where Luna accidentally splashes Goldust again with that crazy amount of verticality in there. We get the Sable bomb and then the TKO. The Meros pick up the win, and a lot of obviously goes to Goldust and Mero, who obviously able to wrestle to keep the crowd invested, but not do so much that they would be accused of outshining the real star piece here. But Luna, who felt she really, if there was no Luna there, Sable would not have seemed like a star.
No.
And Sable did not get on as well with some of her other opponents later on in this run. And Sable would only be in the company for a year after this, and then she'd be gone for a while. And I think Luna really, it's one of those, I swear this has happened before with other wrestlers when someone is paired up with them and they're really, really good. So the heel or whatever is helping them look great.
Yes.
And then they think, oh, this person's a great star. They can do it with anyone.
Yeah.
And you kind of forget, Luna described afterwards, she came backstage and Sable was first and everyone was like, wow! Standing ovation for Sable. And when Luna came in, everyone sat down and didn't even look at her.
Fucking hell, that's so insulting.
No one said anything to her. She went,
Jesus Christ. And I know wrestling's bad for shit like that, but genuinely, if they were men, that would not have happened.
she goes by the makeup cases
Yeah.
because she knows that they're big and she can hide behind and cry.
Oh no!
This is her big WrestleMania match as well. And by the way, by far Sable's best match ever. And Owen Hart is the one person who comes by and he tells her they'll never know, they'll never appreciate what you just did for her. They don't understand. But like anyone, anyone who knows their onions here in wrestling, they know exactly that you made that match. You made it special.
Yeah.
You just made her a star. And the way she described it, she says,
People like Terry Funk and me, we're ragged and real, but Owen Hart was beautiful and real.
and it's just like, you know, not many people would go up to the fucking scary lady covered in veins who's having a shit time at WrestleMania and make the little bit of time for her. But it's nice to know that, like, even in kind of shit times like this, that there was that kind of level of camaraderie there still, you know, among the wrestlers.
It's so nice when you hear of all, like, the little outcasts in wrestling, like, sticking together and, like, supporting each other and stuff. And it's like, of course it's Owen Hart. Like, of course it is.
And, you know, as it kind of stands and all that, you know, it was kind of the beginning of the end in many respects for Luna in the company, because I think
You're not going to want to stick around. You just won't feel good about yourself after that. Like,
yeah, and it's like,
you don't feel welcome there anymore, appreciated.
It really does kind of emphasize that there was an upper limit in what they could do.
Yeah.
You know, and I've listened to a lot of, like, you know, JR and Pritchard, and they have their own podcast where they talk about it. And Pritchard honestly feels like he could give two shits about it.
I
like,
fucking
you know.
bet. Well, he's got, well, not blood on his hands, but he's got guilt on his head,
which he refuses to acknowledge or anything like that. But if it makes you feel any better at home, folks, he's probably incredibly tired right now when you're listening, whenever it is that you're listening.
Good. I hope he gets, like, no sleep most of the day.
Can you imagine the last shit that Bruce Pritchard took and how bad it must have been?
I bet it took him, like, over an hour.
Yeah, I bet it melted the porcelain. I'm just saying, like, you know. But JR is a little bit more sympathetic to Luna because he was like, he was head of talent relations, and he says in as many words, like, he could see how much Luna wanted to be, you know, Mad Dog or be this kind of big character, and it's like, we just weren't going to do it, like, you know, and no one could tell that to her without, you know, just making her leave straight away, so we just kind of
that's so
did
shit,
the best
though.
we could do, you know?
We wanted her around doing the exact thing that she wants to do, but also we don't want her to leave, and we're not willing to actually, like, make her feel good about herself or book her in a way that makes her, you know, unique.
It's his roundabout way of saying, like, eyes bigger than your stomach, you're a woman wrestler in 1999, you're not getting shit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, get over it.
It's like having a really cool limited edition toy that you don't really like, and everyone else really wants to play with it, and you're like, no.
So this match obviously was big and monumental for many, many reasons. Many consider it to be the finest intergender match that had happened at WrestleMania until Ronda Rousey and Triple H and Kurt Angle and Stephanie had a few things to say about that.
Okay.
But I was wondering what your thoughts were on this match. Did you have a star rating for me? And
yeah, this match was okay. It was not great. It was not technically bad either, but it wasn't great. And I was disappointed because I wanted to see more from Luna, and obviously realizing now the circumstances, she wasn't really allowed to do anything.
She almost compromised her character to give that story, because that wasn't Luna as far as I was concerned. Running away and all that, it was weird.
And, like, no wonder she was upset afterwards, like, because, like, she kind of not sold herself out, but, like, she sold herself short for the sake of, like, you know, she thought she was going to get something else back from this, and then for, like, no one to appreciate it or anything. Like, I just think that's really shit. But even without knowing all that, I didn't think it was a very good match. I only gave it 2 stars because I wanted more of Luna, and instead it was, like, just the Sable show, and Sable's not very good.
Well, some more of this is going to probably enrage you a little bit then, I guess. So we have, you know, them wanting to continue this feud and get to the point where Sable's going to become, you know, maybe get the belt or something like that, or maybe Luna's going to get the belt and Sable will get it down the line. And Sable is incensed because on the Raw magazine, which is what Russo was still the editor of, they did a little in-character promo, a little interview with Luna. And in the magazine, the, you know, typical stuff, what do you think of Sable? And she's like, she's just a pretty face. The only reason she's here is because, you know, all these, you know, drooling fans who want to see a piece of meat, and, you know, just run her down saying she had no wrestling skills. I'm a proper wrestler. She's just a pretty face, and I'm going to make her ugly. And for whatever reason, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this about someone who's paid 6 figures to wrestle, Sable thought that was for real. And that she was...
Does she not know what business she's in?
Apparently not.
Because, like
it's in a kayfabe publication.
Like, shit like that happens now on social media from, like, face wrestlers, and it makes no sense, and it pisses me off. It makes sense for Luna to say this stuff in a Raw publication.
It's a magazine,
She's
yeah.
a heel. It makes sense for her character, and it makes sense for Sable's character. I don't understand how anyone can have issue with this.
No, I get you, because when it's stuff like social media, I often find like, well, 1 second you're being the character, 1 second you're being the person who wants you to check out a charity you're interested in. It's very hard to know what the fuck is going on, like. But if it's in, the realms of this, like, how is there any room for misunderstanding whatsoever? So this leads to a confrontation between the two of them, and it's in front of fucking, like, it's in catering and all that.
No.
And she goes up and she's like, Sable's like, you've been saying all this stuff about me, saying all this shit behind my back. And Luna's like, I'm just trying to help you become a better wrestler. That's all this is. This is just an angle. That's all this fucking is. If you worked with me, you'd get over better. And then Sable, with the comeback of the century, says, Vince says I don't have to take bumps. I'm going to be the champion.
Oh my fucking God.
And, I just, as soon as you say that, like, kind of the lineage of the Vachon family, like, just kind of goes through your eyes. And, that's, like, insulting to say to any wrestler, to someone who feels like they're trying to fight for their fucking family's lineage and all that. Because, there was no younger Vachons wrestling. That was it. It was Luna.
Yeah.
And, people didn't realize at the time as well, Luna had young children at home.
What?
Yeah, Luna was a mom pretty young. And
my God.
She had, her kids at home being minded so she could go off and, be a wrestler.
Fucking imagine your mum being Luna Vachon.
But, like,
wow.
She's kind of making, like, whatever about, a lot of guys have abandoned their kids and went off on the road. But, like, to be a mother and give birth and then to leave your kids so you can go and do this with the goal of...
Yeah, you think at least it's for something.
Yeah.
It's for your career, it's for your goals, it's for your dreams.
Yeah, it's kind of that, the sacrifice is twofold there at that point. So, yeah, they had this big fucking, pull apart, screaming match and all that. Of course, it's in front of fucking everyone as well, inside of catering. All of a sudden, Mero is there as well, and Mero's shouting at Gangrel, saying, like, you need to keep, a lid on her, she's fucking crazy and all that. And then Gangrel stands up to defend his wife's honor and goes, well, if you care so fucking much about the girls wrestling, why don't you put on a fucking dress and go out and wrestle them then, Mero? Wow. And they have a big fucking pull apart brawl. And who's right in front of them? Shane and Stephanie McMahon are there getting their food. And it's just an absolute shit show. And surprisingly, the vampire and the demon are the ones who are labelled kind of a little bit like the troublemakers, but it's more so Luna. It's kind of like...
Well, like, I can only imagine, though, like, if it became an actual fight, there were probably some bruises on Sable, because Luna's a badass.
Yeah.
Tough as nails. I wouldn't want to fight her.
It's tough. JR said in that podcast of his, he said something that was very difficult for Gangrel was that because at this point Luna was kind of very paranoid about her position, by extension, she was very paranoid about Gangrel's stuff. So she would, be second guessing, like, if they're going to book him doing this, she'd be, in his ear saying, you need to go to Vince and say, you're not going to do it because they're doing this to bury you and bury me. And, like, it's understandable that fucking earworm gets in you and you think that they don't like you and they want you out the door. So you think everything that's been presented to you is being done to kind of lessen your value.
And also, probably there is a bit or a lot
I'm
of
sure
that.
there's a bit to it, but honestly, probably the thing that lessens their value in the long run was the notion or the belief then with management that they're difficult because they're second guessing everything. It's a double-edged sword. You've one person who's standing up for themselves and going up to Vince's office and doing the right thing, and then the other person does that is a busybody. And it's difficult, particularly I guess if you're a woman in that position, you're more than likely going to get labeled being a busybody. As opposed to someone sticking up to the boss. So it's kind of like, it's kind of shit. I thought we would go on to where the next part of this angle takes us, which was the following month. And I thought this was kind of telling for many ways. WrestleMania, we've got, Sable being alluded to in a match, and it's the hottest thing in the world. And we're literally 1 month later from Unforgiven 1998. This is an evening gown match as Sable is pitted against Luna. And we have a little interview with Luna backstage with Doc Hendricks, where she ruins everyone's fun by saying that she's going to leave Sable like a newborn. Just what the fans wanted before the evening gown match. So when this match started, JR was like, I ain't never seen an evening gown match before, folks. I've seen a couple of guys wrestle in a tuxedo match, but never an evening gown match. So I'm wondering if you knew anything about a tuxedo match or the
Never
genesis.
heard of that about this, and I'm amazed because I talk about men in suits all the time, especially men in suits getting like embarrassed, and yet no one's told me that tuxedo matches are a thing.
By the way, you should check out on our Patreon page our recent pay-per-view classic, The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, getting very embarrassed in a suit. Joe had a very, very good time indeed. Whole bunch of those episodes available now. A lot of fun. We go back and look at classic wrestling pay-per-views as chosen by our fans. But yeah, the tuxedo match. All right, if you were in your hypothetical, I'm giving you the pencil now.
Yeah.
And you're going to book me a tuxedo match. How does it go down? Who's involved? What is it all about?
Okay, so I'm basing it on an evening gown match.
Okay.
So 2 men in tuxedos, and they've got to strip down the other guy, their opponent, to his underpants.
Okay.
I'm going to say, to make it extra humiliating, down to pants and socks specifically.
And those special
Sock suspenders.
Yes, which is lingerie for men.
Yeah, exactly. And it would make sense because tuxedos have lots of different accoutrements
Okay.
to them. Like you have to have the fiddly bow tie and the cummerbund and stuff. Like I feel that would make a good match. It would be quite long because there's lots of layers.
That's true. It's very difficult to get a cummerbund off, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Who are you booking in your fantasy tuxedo match?
What year is this?
I mean, we could go fantasy booking, the world is your oyster, Joe.
That's too big.
Okay, let's go with kind of 90s then, maybe.
90s. Okay, in a tuxedo match. It's got to be someone who would make sense in a tuxedo. So, I mean, Ted DiBiase definitely makes sense. Plus,
Yeah.
we know he's the type of guy who's down for that. Like,
Yeah.
he seems like, I mean, he's already done it in the muck. So he's probably fine with being...
Everyone's got a price, including me, Ted DiBiase, who will do literally anything for money.
And, trying to think of more 90s wrestlers. Not Bret Hart. I can't imagine him in a tux. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a little bit too dignified, isn't
I don't
it?
like that.
That'd be like having like Molly Holly in a bra and panties match. It feels
Yeah.
wrong, like.
I mean, Owen Hart would be good, but I feel he's very similar energy to Ted DiBiase. Like,
Owen
they're
Hart
both
trying to cover his
cheeky.
body with Slammy Awards when he runs away. Ah! How about Ric Flair? It feels like,
Oh, Ric Flair, absolutely, yeah.
Because Rick was, he would do a tuxedo match on himself a lot of the
Yes.
time. He would just rip them all off.
That's the thing, yeah. He'd probably just lose.
He'd very much be
immediately.
like kind of a Sable or like kind of one of those kind of, he just said to please the fans, So, I mean, that's an excellent tuxedo match that you've booked there.
Thank you,
I think
yes.
you would definitely get a lot of eyes, if not subscriptions for that.
And they can fight over the money element because they're both rich guys, and that's why they're in a tuxedo. They could have like the winner gets a Rolex or
I
something.
want someone to be thrown into a big pile of Frere Rocher in the middle of it as well.
Big ambassador's triangle pyramid.
Now, those at home, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know the tuxedo matches, but the only tuxedo matches that I'm aware of...
Wait, so you've never seen one?
I've seen one,
Okay.
but the only ones that I'm aware of took place in early WCW, and it was usually the managers that did it.
Oh.
So we've had like...
Bobby Heenan.
But I don't think Bobby Heenan's been one, but we've had like
Really?
Jim Cornette versus Paul Heyman.
Yay, every woman's fantasy.
Or like Howard Finkel, the ring announcer, versus Harvey Whippleman, the little manager, Downtown
they're doing
Bruno.
this all wrong. Not like that.
So it's kind of, they went for the kind of the gag stuff usually. I don't think, if there has been a genuinely hunky tuxedo match, we need to know. But it was just weird where it was like one of those things where it was the oddly shaped men were the founding fathers of the strip match, not the women.
And then they made it with sexy women instead. That's so bizarre.
These evening gowns leave something to be desired,
They're
Joe.
shit. Luna Vachon is dressed like she's wearing like a Halloween store witch's outfit. Like literally.
Or something you could buy in Asha in Stephen's Green in Dublin. I always get a good tweet or two after I make a reference to my far more goth lifestyle.
I got a witch's outfit for like a $5 in Quality Save last Halloween,
yeah.
and it looks exactly like the one that Luna is wearing. Sable isn't even in a dress. She's wearing like a sparkly blouse and a sparkly skirt, and she looks like your glamorous aunt who's attending a funeral.
Well, she's wearing black, but she's trying to make a show of us.
Yeah, exactly. Embarrassing.
She leaves early, like,
I hear she's got a flask of sherry in her jacket pocket. Awesome.
Now, it became apparent to me early on that this is more function than form, in that they didn't go out and find some great evening gowns and then stripped out of them. They, I think, made these to be stripped out of because...
Yeah, but like even still, like, hey, and this is the issue I've had with other evening gown matches that I've seen, and I think I've only seen one other one. But an evening gown is a specific item of clothing. It's like you can't have a tuxedo match and then have a guy come out in like, I don't know, dressed like a teacher.
Oh, lads, it would be amazing if they have a tuxedo match and
Just
then
like
someone comes out.
Short-sleeved blue shirt.
And it's like, your thing says black tie, and they're wearing like jeans and a sports coat. Like, get out of here!
Go home.
Disqualification, not allowed to take part in the tuxedo match.
An evening gown match, like, in theory, I really like the idea because evening gowns are really complicated. I mean, you know, I've got a couple of evening gowns.
Yes.
They involve tape. They involve sometimes special underwear, sometimes corsets.
You have to put out a special candle if they're worn, otherwise it feels wrong.
And
I have to cook a really special dinner.
There's complicated elements to it, which would make a match more stimulating and more interesting because, like I was saying with the tuxedos, there's layers involved, and some of the bits are complicated, and they might require like a zip that gets stuck, or like, you know, a corset bit that has to be untangled. Whereas this, it's just a t-shirt and a skirt, and it's like disassembled by like Velcro sleeves.
The first move of the match is Luna goes over and goes meh and pulls off Sable's arm. And then Sable's like, "How dare you?" And she removes her arm. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like special. I mean, if you
Lego clothes.
I mean, yeah, we've all gotten something off, you know, AliExpress or something like that we've regretted.
Yeah.
But you know, no one's ever bought a shirt and been like, "Oh, this is awful. I got it on Alibaba," and just the sleeve just comes off. When
It feels like they just bought it from a stripper's outlet mall or something. It's like, this is what strippers use to like slowly disassemble their clothes for a show.
And anytime it happens when we're watching a movie, Joe always points it out. Anytime a camera lingers a little bit too long in a particular place, and I think I can, for the first time, steal your thunder and point out, someone likes boots, and it's this cameraman, because this cameraman gives us no fewer than 4 lengthy shots of Luna Vachon's big old boots that she's wearing. Which again is form and function, because if she didn't have those like 4-inch platforms.
Oh yeah.
There's no, like, I think they were like, they got the dress and they had to like enhance the boots or something like that. Also, if you're going to have an evening gown match, I would say it behooves you as a promoter to make sure that people are wearing different colours.
Yes.
Because this was just basically a witch fight.
Yeah. I'm really pissed off about how not sexy the evening gowns are. Like, I just feel that that's like, you know, tuxedos are sexy, evening gowns should be sexy. They just are. And like, neither of
these... And I will say as well, evening gown matches, like, if they're to write one word on the whiteboard of what it should be sexy. And this is a very...
Or like, sophisticated maybe.
There's nothing to this. They literally just stand there and they go, eh. And the crowd, when they get a glimpse of Sable's bra or whatever, they go fucking apeshit. They're like, ah! But most of the time, they're just kind of upset and bored.
Yeah. Which
has led me to create a new word just for this special crowd, which is hornery. When you are cranky and incredibly horny at the same time. Which is exactly what this crowd was.
I just feel like the crowd would have been a lot happier if they'd come out wearing 2 very glamorous, lovely dresses and then torn them up. Because as well, it's satisfying to see something expensive get destroyed.
That is very true. It's like watching a piano being thrown out a window.
Exactly. It is, you know, something sequiny, something glamorous. I want to see that shredded.
So we just have then, after arms have been removed, Sable is in the corner.
Like, skirt's been pulled down.
Yeah, and then Luna just takes off her top. Yeah. And the match ends, although we get no bell ring. They don't announce Luna the winner. They don't, like, literally it's just Sable. The fact that Sable is in her underwear is such a, like, a moment for the World Wrestling Federation that all the post-match formalities, like, who won that then?
We'll play their music, yeah.
Oh, they don't even play Luna's music?
No, they play Sable's music. Even though she lost.
Fucking lost!
Because she's sexy.
There was some pretty, like, you know, we've had a lot of chat about outfits and all that here. The space-age tights, or whatever was going on there with the bottom half of Sable here.
Yeah.
Please explain what was going on.
I don't think I can, because I don't understand how it works. It's some kind of science. I think NASA designed these tights. She's wearing tights, that much I can tell, because her legs are a different colour from the rest of her body. And as Jerry Lawler kindly pointed out to us, no tan lines, so it's definitely not.
No, that was JR who said it, which made it even
JR,
worse.
Was it? Wow.
Cowboy emoji.
Fucking hell, you hornery old bastard.
He's definitely hornery on AEW now, for sure. Like, his favourite wrestler is Penelope Forge. See if you can spot that next time that she has a match on AEW.
And yeah, her tights are underneath her thong that she's wearing, which would be very uncomfortable, I can only imagine. But also, the tights don't ride up above or below the waistband on the thong, and the waistband of the thong is thin. It's a small thong.
My theory was that these were special leggings that just looked
They're not
like...
leggings. They're not leggings. They are definitely tights.
Ah.
Because for one, I mean, they'd have to be footed leggings. They've got feet on them.
Oh, that's true.
And two, they're sheer. You don't get sheer leggings. You only get sheer tights. So... flesh coloured like that. So I think what it is someone's designed a special all-in-one pair of tights and thong so that it can't ride up or ride down.
So see what the boys in the lab have to say about this one. Like,
I'm fascinated. I really wish. If anyone knows, please tell me.
It is very, very. It's just strange because like I think a lot of fans like often don't realize how often like women wear tights like in wrestling.
Women are always wearing tights, and no one ever. I barely realize half the time because they're really good quality tights.
So I think obviously the hosiery that wrestlers are privy to is perhaps like 5 or 6 years in the future at any given point. Like,
at least.
And at the end of the match, we have Luna going underneath the ring, and they imply that even though like her gown is stripped off, and what is underneath is far less provocative than like the stuff she wore. You know, those early promos we watched with her and Sherry. It's just that with less studs on it, basically, and more material. And then they imply that Sable has taken off like her undergarments.
Yeah, that like Luna's naked.
And that's why you always hang around with a guy with a big robe in case he needs to be put. And it was kind of funny seeing like Luna wrapped up in the big Goldust robe being like bleh, and being taken away. And it was kind of ruined then by Sable doing her worst Luna impression of standing in the ring in her underwear going, yeah! It was
bad.
It was bad. It was bad. And like, you know, as a recovering prude, you know, I don't want to say that like there's no enjoyment or sport to be had in, you know, wrestling and sexy stuff. I'm sure I have great crossover appeal.
Don't do it so badly.
That
it's
was
so
it.
badly done.
The only thing more egregious than just egregious sexy stuff in wrestling is egregiously unsexy stuff being presented as being titillating, when it was literally just, come on, let's take off Sable's clothes then and have a look, shall we?
There wasn't even any wrestling.
Yeah, it was like, it was as, there was as much titillation as like dial-up internet downloading pictures of Sable in 1998, essentially. Yeah. So, I mean, they knew their target audience, that's all I can say for that. Did you give it a star wipe rating, honey bunny?
I mean, you could, I suppose, call it a star wipe rating, technically.
What have you got? How many stars have we got for this one then?
None.
No stars.
It's bad. If they'd done the evening gowns properly, it would have gotten a star from me. But they didn't even do. It's an evening gown match, and there were no evening gowns. So I am very pissed off.
Basically, like a funeral match, pretty much, is what it was.
Kind of, yeah. I would have rathered to see. Genuinely, I would have had much more entertainment to see Sable come out in her normal clothes, get undressed, while Luna makes fun of her. And I think everyone would have been happier.
Vince Russo would have been happier with that, like, you know. Everyone would have been happy, right?
And so, and now Sable gets undressed, and we're all like, yeah! While Luna goes, ah!
Kind of feel bad for Luna, and it's kind
Absolutely,
of,
yeah.
you know, because at least in the first match we watched with them, her utility, at least, you know, her skill was being used, even if, you know, it was being done in that classic wrestling way where you can't even notice how much hard work she's putting in here. But it felt like it could have been anyone there other than Luna.
Yeah.
You know, and that was...
and it should have been anyone as well, because, like, they booked this match in a way that's like they want you to cheer for Luna to win, so Sable gets undressed, but then they both get undressed anyway, and it's just like, well, in that case, you probably should have had Sable go up against like more of a face, so that you actually want the face to win. Yeah, it's weird to cheer for Luna and be like,
they hadn't really kind of worked out, surprisingly, the nuts and bolts of the psychology of a strip wrestling match at this point in time.
Children are confusedly masturbating, like, I don't understand.
Oh, I feel bad. We've finished talking about the Sable and Mero instances with Luna, and there was one great quote from her when she nearly got in a fight with Mark Mero backstage, which it stuck with me. I'll never ever hurt you, Sable, but I will fuck you up, Mark Mero. You've got your fucking Golden Globes, but I'll bite a chunk out of you before you can lay a finger on me. So she had issues there.
Legend.
It's the next few years for her involved in the company, you know. she is used more as kind of like, just another one of the women. They do pair her up at one point with a group called the Oddities, which was another kind of Russo creation where you had like kind of the freak show people, and they were teamed up with the Insane Clown Posse.
Okay.
And she does not have nice things to say about the Insane Clown Posse.
Oh, really?
They were building to a match between her and Violent J, and the idea was that they were going to do like a hair versus hair match thing, and they were going to like have the clowns get heel heat by cutting off her ponytail and all that jazz. And right before they were going to do the match, the Insane Clown Posse got a better offer from WCW, and they went over there instead. And
they're probably only courting WWE for like so they could negotiate with Ted Turner.
Well, that was it.
Hand him something on the table, like, well,
you've done some pretty in-depth research on the Insane Clown Posse for Subculture.
a little
other
bit.
Podcasts.
I mean, not me personally, but yeah.
You've been schooled on the ways of the Insane Clown
Yes.
Posse, and they were, I think we talked about it as well with. There was an episode. I think it was even Cherry Funk or something like that. We talked about them a little bit.
Was it Colt Cabana?
May have been. I know they've come up before, but it's just where like
Colt Cabana's definitely a friend of the posse.
they're savvy clowns.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah.
They know where the dollar is and they
Yes.
know how to get it. Like, and they'll do it in a way where they don't break contracts because they know what it is to be in a courtroom. They're very fucking savvy clowns.
Yeah.
So yeah, they went up to WCW, and that left Luna again. It's kind of sad, when it's like big feuds get built up and then you don't have your payoff.
Yeah.
And this is what she had to say about the Insane Clown Posse. And it is late in the recording now, so I won't necessarily have to do the full Luna voice for it because I don't think I can get the level of venom and vitriol.
Do you want me to try? I've had a little break. I can
Yeah.
probably knock out another one.
Fucking pussy, piss artist, fucking clown, dickheads, eat me in your nightmares.
And that was Eat Me in Your Nightmares, not Meet Me in Your Nightmares, just in case
Eat
you
Me,
couldn't
yeah.
get... Yeah, that's terrifying there. So, it's...
Fucking pussy, piss artist, fucking clown, dickheads eat me in your nightmares.
Yeah, it's... Justified anger there.
Good line, I love that.
I think one nice thing about her later run...
Pussy, piss artist.
Pussy piss artists,
Fucking clown.
fucking clowns, eat me in your nightmares. Like, she's going to show up in your nightmares and you're going to have to do oral sex to her. Jesus.
You thought oral sex, I thought cannibalism.
Oh, okay.
Which is actually even scarier because she looks kind of like she might like smell weird. Like
She's already taken a chunk out of Gangrel.
Yeah.
Like, she's already eaten a vampire. She would think a clown's anything to her. Probably tastes away nicer anyway. So yeah, it's nice. I think the last couple, like the 6 months to a year, and they weren't like big stars or anything. They were on kind of the smaller shows, but they did pair Luna together with Gangrel. So like they got to come out together and just drink blood, and she would wear like the big puffy shirt like him. And even though they were kind of just they were like on Heat and used kind of as random teams on Raw and all of that, it was very obvious that it was probably the happiest she ever was while she was in the company, just because her and her husband got to be together. They could just focus on their stuff and doing what they wanted to do, and they seemed to have a good time with it. So that was nice, at least. And Luna, other than doing the few bits with WWA, she basically retired in 2002 or thereabouts, and she did come back a few times here and there to do some shots. I think she wrestled for some kind of like independent companies as late as like 2007. And the last that I had heard of her was WWE did like a Where Are They Now thing in like the late 2000s. And she was running like a successful trucking business and had gotten like out of the wrestling business and had, done quite well for herself and all that, which was nice. And I think, from there, I think there were some kind of, darker points in her life. She suffered with, drug abuse, and she split up from Gangrel as well. So she did die, I believe, it was 2000 and... Oh, God. Oh, sorry. I was just literally checking up there for a second about the details of her last few years, and I forgot literally one of the fucking saddest thing that ever happened to her. Or to like any wrestler we've talked about. It was in 2009, Christmas 2009. There was a fire in her home. And it's where she had all of the wrestling memorabilia. She had like the original belts that her aunt had won, all of like the original kind of, flyers and posters from the Vachon family, and she lost it all in a blaze, and she lost her home and all that.
Oh,
like, it was literally, she was dead, I think, less than a year after that, which is really, really sad, and she died of an overdose. And like, talk about like, finding a way out of wrestling but being hit with like, breakups are never easy.
Yeah.
She had issues, obviously, but like there's one thing to lose your home. I think I always feel kind of like fortunate in the fact that I moved away from my home in inverted commas. So, even if there was a fire here, there'd be a lot of stuff I'd be very sad that it would be gone and all that. But it's not as if I feel like there's a legacy or a history or like I've dishonored my family or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if you're like almost a caretaker for that legacy of the Vachons that she had kind of viewed herself, it don't get much more heartbreaking than that. Like, I do remember there was like it was one of the kind of first GoFundMes I remember going around, was like kind of, she had nowhere to stay over Christmas and all that, And I think her death, she was only 48 years old when she died.
Oh my God, that's so young.
Painkillers, Oxycontin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, it's sad when, there's a breakup and the little Gangrel has spoken about it. It's like, the lifestyle was getting too much for me, so I stepped out. And he's a vampire who makes pornography for a living while doing wrestling. So they're obviously getting in kind of deep there. And I think that she obviously didn't have the support system or the structure in place.
She has kids with him.
She had kids with him. Yeah, they had kids together. He had a kid from a previous marriage, and she had earlier.
How old are their kids now?
Well, I know that one of her children was. This was actually passed on to us. Really roundabout piece of trivia that links up with our other podcast, It's Raw, where we do Kitchen Nightmares with Gordon Ramsay. It's myself, Joe, and Adam. It's over the Podcrabs channel. Check it out. But her son was on a series of Hell's Kitchen and is actually a chef, I think, out in Las Vegas, that area now, thereabouts. So he was, they've all grown up and they've went on to do various things. I don't think there's any involvement in wrestling. I think that the legacy is there. Like one kind of sweet story about their kids I caught, which was that they had in their home, they had like a rock garden, which they called the Own Garden, because it was like a tribute to Owen Hart. Oh. And she had gathered stones from all her travels all over the world. She'd always go to beaches, and her and Gangrel would pick up stones, and they would put them together in this garden.
Yeah.
And the kind of running gag in the house was that because it was in the back of the house where the kids used to try and sneak in or sneak out and stuff like that, the kids were convinced that Owen Hart had haunted the garden, because they try and jump over the fence and like the fence would break, or like the door would be locked on them when they were leaving.
Owen.
A loud cat would suddenly appear out of nowhere. And it's just, it is like, it's bittersweet, because doing the research for this, if I found out two of the biggest oddballs in wrestling had this like big fucking actual like, as weird as it was, an idyllic marriage for as many, 18 years together, that's a lifetime in wrestling. Yeah. And you don't look further than a Rob Van Dam episode to know that, what seems a lifetime in wrestling don't necessarily always have happy endings. And, they split up, they were still friends and on good terms, and they had a life together and they had a family together. It is just kind of tragic and sad. I guess it does kind of emphasize 48.
That's so young.
And she was honored in the Hall of Fame, a year or two later, which is nice, all that. And
just a shame that's like that seems so often in the WWE, that like these really unique female wrestlers get posthumously added.
Yeah, more so than Randy Savage as well. You have to look at there's big names in wrestling where it feels like they're almost like they don't know how to approach it, and once they're dead, it's like, oh great, now we can actually talk about this.
Yeah, because they're not going to stir up any shit for us.
And exactly for someone like Luna, how much it would have meant for them to make even the tiniest little nod or a reference to her whatsoever. Yeah. And I think, if she could see the influence she's had on women's wrestling and what women's wrestling is now.
Yeah, seriously, like Abaddon.
Yeah, it would probably piss her off to see what wrestling is now, because that's what she was 20 years too soon. You talk about this character, this woman with this fucking presence. And man, yeah, wrestling could use a Luna Vachon now.
Absolutely. Oh, you can just imagine if she was still alive today and still working in the wrestling industry. I mean, I can only imagine she'd be a manager in AEW.
Oh yeah, and she's one of those wrestlers who I think has influenced a lot more wrestlers themselves than you would probably realize. And I think it's her legacy is definitely there, but I think she is in danger, as oftentimes can happen. A name that never maybe reached the heights that she herself had set herself. By her own admission. And it was difficult to do some of the research because she was quite depressed about, in her opinion, her failure to live up to the legacy of her family. And I thought the sweetest thing in the world was that after the whole feud with Sable ended, she was never, she never got the title, but Gangrel bought her, he got the proper replica belt made for her. And he was like, well, you're always the champion in my books. And it was, when she first brings it up, it's like, oh, he gave me a replica title there. But then like later on in the interview, it's like, you could tell it actually means something to her, that he knew that was what she wanted. So like, yeah, it is, I don't want to scare on the issue. It is a tragic end to this story, and I guess all I can say is at least wrestling, for all its faults, is in more of a place where someone with, outlying talents or a unique presence like that, it doesn't mean like you're a square peg trying to fit in a round hole. It feels like at least there's more appetite for different women in wrestling now than there was maybe in the 80s and the 90s when Luna would have been around.
Yeah.
Because I feel like she kind of got caught between two waves of like women's wrestling not being a thing we want to have on TV at all, and then we bring it back, but it's going to be like sexy pillow fights and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts on Luna. Where does she rank for you? Is she someone that like is going to be on your kind of mental wall of fame? Is she someone you'd want to check out more of going on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, God. I mean, her matches were amazing. If I could find more good matches, like more matches without Sable in, I'd be very happy. Definitely. I really liked her wrestling style. Like, it's proper hard-hitting, fast stuff. Like, a really good mix as well of, like, not quite high-flying, but there is a bit of spectacle in there. Where
Reckless
she, like,
abandon.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that she, like, fights men, always good in my books. And I definitely watched that match with Doink and Dink the Clowns again. Easily.
Well, it's a 5-star match. She's part of a
so good.
very select group of people right now,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yep.
I think we're going to have to look down and run through your entirety of all your match ratings and find out who are the 5-star golden gals and guys of wrestling in your mind.
Award season.
Well, before we reveal what our next episode is going to be, let's have a look at your tweets and your Facebook posts about the one and only
Luna Vachon.
And we're back. Joe, have you got some tweets for us over on How To Wrestling on the Twitter? Give us a follow. And don't forget, if you want to continue the story, you can. Use the hashtag HowToLunaVachon. And don't forget to check out HowToWrestling.com for all the info and the matches and any recommended bonus viewing for this here episode.
So first up from Fizz versus the World says, Luna was the first playable woman in a WWF video game.
Oh shit, it was like Raw or something like that on the Saturn or one
I've got
of
a
those?
screenshot, if you recognise
Yeah,
it.
I think that's Raw. I think it was on the Saturn. I think it was in the arcades as well.
She's billed as coming from the other side of darkness.
Amazing.
I didn't know that's where she was billed from.
Well, that's fucking incredible. I that could have well been a hometown name. That's fucking brilliant. Move over from wherever he darn well pleases. That's my new favourite hometown name. I think she said that was part of the reason she had a heat with Alundra Blaze, that Alundra was told that she'd be in the video game. I think if you're a video game developer, particularly this would have come out around the same time as Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, you want Luna.
I mean, Luna kind of feels like she fits the bill a little bit better.
Yeah.
Over here from John Rhodes, Miss Rumble 2000. She genuinely looks like she wants to kick the fuck out of Jerry the King Lawler.
Yeah. That's a match I would have loved. I would have paid a lot of money to see that.
Luna versus Jerry, like, fucking amazing.
Shit out of him. Next up from Gummy Davidson, Luna really missed out on having a career as a voiceover actress after wrestling. Just imagine her playing a villain in a cartoon, video game, or anime dub.
I mean, anytime I watch Power Rangers that's got Rita Repulsa on it, I think she's doing Luna.
Yeah.
I mean, Luna's been doing that voice since the 80s, you know?
Definitely.
You can't convince me that that's not at least an outlying influence of some sort. Over here from Mike Peacock on the Facebook page, facebook.com/HowToWrestling. Give us a like. You can also leave us a review for our podcast here, which we encourage you to do wherever you consume your audio media. Mike Peacock here saying, I feel bad that I never really got a chance to really watch her wrestle because Luna was mostly a manager and valet in the Fed when I was regularly watching, but her personality was unforgettable. Seriously, women's wrestling needs more characters like Luna because that bombast and non-traditional look really helped her stand out. Plus, she deserved all the credit in the world for making that blank sable look credible.
We like to prefer to call her a pencil.
Yes, you've learned your lesson.
Now up from Rusted Wire Witch on Twitter, voiced like a black metal singer, looking like an 80s slasher movie villain that had gone through hell and wouldn't stop coming after you. She terrified and delighted me when I was younger. She was intimidating, fascinating as fuck in real life, if going by Gangrel's story about how they met.
Well, yeah, she made him a vampire.
Can't believe she, lives the gimmick. She's properly as weird as she seems.
That's it. It's not a gimmick.
Yeah.
I think, that's probably the thing we've been circling around.
I think it can be a gimmick, but also be true.
I think she dials it up, but that is who, if you're going, day to day,
that's her.
That's it, folks. That is who she is. It's fucking incredible. Alex Bewat here. I remember I got into Luna when listening to you, Adam, and Billy talking about how frustrated you were with the company's almost willful refusal to put her and Ivory in a straight wrestling match. It led me to watch some of her stuff, and I can only say somehow ahead of her time, and at the same time a throwback to an earlier time in wrestling. I loved her, massive fan, and the best women's promo in the World Wrestling Federation. So yeah, I think Luna was Like, I think it shows you, like, what a standout character she was. Is that, I think Adam and Billy on the Ad Share podcast never knew much about Luna, no nostalgia for her, and straight away they were like, when is she going to do a big thing, Kevin? What's going to happen? I think the only issue was that Luna had been incorrectly called Luna Goldust by Billy, who misheard the ring announcer on the first time. But yeah, Luna definitely. The throwback I get, and
yes, yeah.
Ahead of her time. I don't think we're yet at the point in time where she was kind of casting a light towards.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Abaddon.
Abaddon definitely has similar vibes.
Yeah.
Like, Luna Luna chased us aggressively down a seedy alleyway so that Abaddon could stab us in our back and then eat our flesh.
Luna ran so Abaddon could crawl. Cody Austin here to round us off. I always felt like Luna deserved better. She kind of played the role that Natalia plays today, a great worker from a family of great workers who plays second fiddle to others who are arguably not as good as her.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of a way to put a bow and a ribbon on it.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing about Luna is that because of how much she stands out, I think Natalia, she's a great wrestler and all that, but I think if you had a lineup of women's wrestlers in 2021...
She's a generically attractive blonde white woman. Like,
She, Luna, I think you will never make the mistake of mistaking Luna Vachon for anyone else, because there has only ever been one, and there only ever will be one, Luna Vachon, the fucking crown jewel of the fighting Vachon family, as far as I can say. And I think, if anything, Mad Dog Vachon and Vivian Vachon and Paul the Butcher, I think all three of them, immensely proud they would be of the career that there was no blueprint for a career being a woman, like full stop, yet alone being this type of a woman.
And not just in wrestling, but like just generally in society,
in media,
there's just not. I mean, even today, there's not room for women like that. Like, in music, in movies, in nothing. She's so unique.
There's so many men and women who I knew way back in the day when I used to go to rock clubs and stuff to see my brother's band play. And I feel like if I wanted to get any of them into wrestling, I just show them a Luna. Yeah. That's the one that, you know what, Luna Vachon is probably one of the most effective gateway drugs into wrestling that we've ever done on this show. So maybe you try that with your goth pals next time they're wondering what you're into in that old wrestling
Show her fighting Dink and Doink the Clown. It's bad fucking ass. Metal as shit.
We had to mention there about the voice of the heavy metal singer. Someone actually stuck that heavy metal promo that she did set to heavy metal music. There's a couple of those floating around YouTube.
Yeah.
Check those out. Absolutely brilliant. Hey, our next episode, one we are immensely excited about, and we have some fabulous artwork to show you for it as well when we will be debuting that very shortly on the socials. Big shout out as always to our illustrator Dan, who's back and better than ever. This was fucking incredible, this Luna Vachon artwork.
Yeah.
But I can't wait for you to see the artwork for the next guy that we're going to be doing an episode on, because it sums up probably one of the most complex in a sense, but also one of just the fucking coolest guys there's ever been in wrestling, who I feel the world has come around full circle and finally appreciates him for the big cool motherfucker he is. I'm talking about Big Daddy Cool, Big Sexy. I'm talking about Diesel. Our next episode is all about the one and only Kevin Nash. I cannot wait for you to find out about, honestly, one of the greatest minds in wrestling.
Yeah, careful not to say greatest wrestlers in
No.
wrestling.
Let's live by the mantra, work smart, not hard, because that is exactly... Like, if we work by Kevin Nash's schedule, this next episode won't be out for the 6 months, so we're going to try and work a little bit harder than that. But, oh my God, given your opinions on certain kind of mindsets in wrestling, let's just say, I think you're going to fucking love Big Sexy.
I hope so, because I worry, because he's part of the clique, and he's like friends with a lot of wrestlers who I don't think very highly of as people.
Yeah.
And yet, the little I know about Kevin Nash as a person, I've really liked. Like, he's on Twitter, and he's this nice, normal guy.
I think you were kind of saying you wanted to do an episode just because you've been, this guy had been doing good Twitter for a while now.
Yeah, I just find him interesting as a person. Like, he's political in a way that I can appreciate.
He's actually intelligent, unlike a lot of other political wrestlers.
Yeah, and he doesn't, get needlessly involved in wrestling beef for the sake of it, but he does step in when things get taken out of hand, or when there's, certain older guys who are like, back in my day we did this, and he'd step in and be like, shut up, no we didn't.
All I'll say as well, though, no shortage of beef to talk about on the episode
I'm
itself.
sure. But yeah, I think the final nail in the coffin was we watched Magic Mike the other day. And Kevin Nash plays a stripper. And I was like, Kevin, we need to do an episode on Kevin Nash.
And I was like, his stripping is actually very, very similar to his wrestling in a few. And as soon as I was saying that, I was like, we got to do this episode soon. Because there are analogies that need to be drawn here. There are comparisons that we need to have. So we went back and forth in this one. I think we will go with How to Kevin Nash, because he has, of course, embodied several characters over the years, and the man himself is what we're talking about, not just the character he portrayed.
Not hashtag how to big sexy daddy cool, which will fill up the entire Twitter character count.
How to Kevin Nash. Make sure you use a V, not an F in that one. And we'll be coming to you with that very, very shortly. We're after your favourite matches, moments, a lot of stories and anecdotes about this guy. There's a lot of chat about him being maybe a little bit lazy and maybe not being the most hard-working individual, or maybe taking that work smart, not hard mentality to places where wrestling was not quite ready for it yet as well. I also want some of the instances of Kevin Nash not giving a shit about whatever it was that he was doing.
Yes, please.
We're going to be talking about the Blaster Masters. We're going to be talking about Oz. We're going to be talking about the NWO. And maybe a few good old wrestling matches thrown in for good measure in there as well. We will be watching some shoot interviews with glasses of red wine. It's How to Kevin Nash, our next episode. And as always, thank you everyone for checking in this episode of How to Wrestling. Don't forget to check out over now on our Patreon page. We've just passed, there's over 100 pay-per-view reviews.
What?
Can you believe it? Going all the way back to SummerSlam 2015, I believe.
That's silly. That is a silly... We should go back at some point. As a piece of bonus content, we should go back and listen to them.
Yeah, check out all of our correct predictions. We get people saying all the time, you particularly, I don't know shit has been pointed out.
Yeah, it turns out that the less you know about wrestling, the more accurately you can predict what will happen in wrestling storylines, because wrestling is booked by a bunch of fucking idiots who don't even watch wrestling.
But of course, not just those WWE, AEW, and some NXT pay-per-view reviews in there. We have our pay-per-view classic series where we go back and check out big in-depth reviews of classic pay-per-views. We've done some In Your Houses. We've done Survivor Series 98, December to December 2006. We're going to be dipping our toes into the water with some ECW very, very shortly on that as well.
And special ECW, the raw, unedited ECW, as not found, not available on the network.
Yes.
Very excited to see, hopefully, Sandman enter Sandman.
Maybe finally that this ECW business will make a little bit of sense.
And I'll get that ECW feeling.
That ECW feeling. You'll laugh, you'll clap your hands, you'll whoop
cry.
and cheer. Our Patreon page is everything you'd hope it would be, and so much more. I can't wait for you to see it. Subscribe now for those $5 a month. You can unsubscribe whenever you like. This show is 100% fan and listener supported, and we do not interrupt the conversation for ad spots or sponsorships every 2 seconds. It's because of our lovely backers on Patreon, and we thank you for continuing to support us through the pandemic and beyond. But until next time, where we're going to get in that big rig of Big Sexy Diesel, it's a goodbye from me, Kevin.
And a goodbye from me, Joe.
And we'll see you next time on How to Wrestling.
See ya.